Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. Now, let's start. This story is about a green-haired boy who faced many challenges in his small life. It begins with his mother and father, 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 Midoriya and 𝐻𝐸 Midoriya. They fell in love once they both graduated from high school. 𝐒𝐭 went to school to become a nurse and 𝐻𝐸 never truthfully said what he did. 𝐒𝐭 believed he wanted to become an accountant, having to leave Japan to work in the US. 𝐒𝐭 received money from him, causing her to not have to work as he made more money than was needed. However, before 𝐻𝐸 left, the two conceived a child. 𝐻𝐸 decided to leave the country even knowing a child was on the way. 𝐒𝐭 was saddened but decided it was for the best. Though, her feelings for the man began to falter. The child was born in July. 𝐒𝐭 named the child Izuku, who was a boy. Raising the boy was hard as a single parent. Luckily, her good friend Mitsuki Bakugo was happy to help. Already having a male child in April, they both agreed to have the two kids play together when Mitsuki was over. After that, life was good. Izuku was a sweet adorable boy with fluffy curly green hair. Mitsuki's child, Katsuki, loved being with Izuku, protecting him from the littlest of things. They played every single day growing up, though that changed when they both turned 4. Izuku wasn't showing any signs of a quirk. The only thing that made 𝐒𝐭 question it was seeing Izuku's hair grow insanely long. The green hair reached down to his hips. Izuku always seemed to have loved it. 𝐒𝐭 tried a few times to cut it, but every time Izuku would cry, and if she was successful, the hair would turn to a dark brown. A few strands of hair were brown, but that was masked behind all the green curls. Because of that, 𝐒𝐭 went to the doctors asking about the hair. The doctors said it was just unbalanced genes in the hair. Besides, Izuku loved the hair. Katsuki learned from 𝐒𝐭 how to brush hair and how to braid it. Every time they saw each other, Katsuki would braid it. Eventually, Katsuki's quirk appeared. Explosion. Katsuki's personality changed as well. He would act rude and very arrogant. Luckily, Katsuki still treated Izuku very kindly. They still bonded over heroes. Izuku absolutely adored heroes. He would spend hours talking about them. Once Izuku turned 4, 𝐒𝐭 and Izuku went to the quirk doctors. Izuku was hoping he had a quirk related to his long hair, which was now down to his knees. In the end, the doctor announced Izuku had a quirk. Healing hair. The doctor explained the quirk can heal others. Though, they didn't know what caused the quirk to occur. They tried using the hair on a few bruises Izuku got from playing, but nothing happened. 𝐒𝐭 decided to leave. For now, they would come back once they figured out how to trigger the healing abilities. Izuku didn't lose hope. Right when he got home, he called Katsuki. Katsuki and Mitsuki came over to celebrate the quirk news. The two boys spent a while trying to figure out how to use the quirk. After many failed attempts, they figured it out. Izuku needed to sing a song for the quirk to activate. They figured it out when they grew tired and began to watch a few hero-themed movies. One of them was a musical. Not caring who heard him, he sang the opening song. Little did he know, everyone around him gasped. Izuku's already long hair lit up to a bright neon green. A bruise Katsuki had was healed in a matter of seconds. Izuku was oblivious to it as his eyes were closed for most of the song. Once the song was over, Izuku opened his eyes and looked around at his family's faces. Before he could say something, his mom rushed to hug him, saying, "Your quirk. I saw it work." Izuku smiled so large that everyone almost had to look away. Katsuki quickly assessed the quirk and said the healing abilities must occur when he sings. And with that, Izuku began to sing as many songs as he could find. He went to the bathroom once and saw his hair glow when he sang. It was amazing. Izuku and Katsuki began to experiment. They found out different songs will have different effects. Some songs healed an injury very fast, while others took longer. Plus, Izuku's hair started to grow longer. Now that he was using his quirk more often, his hair grew past his knees. Katsuki would always complain every time he came to Izuku's house and saw the boy's hair. the hair was getting too long. Though, Katsuki likes to braid it. 𝐿𝐭 signed 𝐒𝐿𝐽 up for music lessons. 𝐒𝐿𝐽 insisted on learning how to play a whole bunch of instruments. And with that, at a young age, he started learning. For his birthday, 𝐿𝐭 had gotten him his very own keyboard piano. On his 5th birthday, Mitsuki gifted him a songbook. Looking through the lists, 𝐒𝐿𝐽 found this one song called Healing Incantation. He tried it out and quickly realized its power. Every time he sang that song, his hair grew brighter and healed faster. As well, he figured out his quirk makes people younger. One day, 𝐒𝐿𝐽 and Katsuki were playing in a park. A random little boy fell and tripped, cutting his knee. 𝐒𝐿𝐽 was quick to heal the knee, singing the song and wrapping his hair around it. The boy gasped, pulling 𝐒𝐿𝐽 along with him. Katsuki followed behind, trying to stop 𝐒𝐿𝐽. However, he didn't listen. The boy brought 𝐒𝐿𝐽 and Katsuki to a hospital which was a street away from the park. Bringing 𝐒𝐿𝐽 to a room, the boy pulled him to a bed. The boy explained the person in the bed was his mom who was very sick. 𝐒𝐿𝐽 sympathized. If that was his own mom, he would have healed her. Katsuki told him not to and to leave. 𝐒𝐿𝐽 went over to the bed and jumped up. Unbraiding his hair, he wrapped some of the strands around the woman's arms, face, and upper body. Singing the song, he closed his eyes. He heard voices and gasps. After the song was completed, he opened his eyes. Eyes widening, he saw the women that he was healing, sitting up and looking younger. In the end, 𝐒𝐽's and Katsuki's parents were called. 𝐿𝐭 and Mitsuki came into the room surprised to see a woman and a boy hugging 𝐒𝐽. Katsuki came over to the parents and explained what happened. There were a few nurses and doctors with very confused faces. They assessed the situation and figured out 𝐒𝐽 had the ability to heal others and to make people younger. The staff at the hospital promised they would keep it a secret, knowing if villains heard that information, 𝐒𝐽 would be hunted. 𝐿𝐭 made 𝐒𝐽 promise he would never use that side of the quirk again, saying, "It breaks the law of order and people need to age properly." 𝐒𝐽 never used that side in a long time. Though, he was very tempted when his own mother grew sick. The doctors couldn't figure out what she had, only saying 𝐿𝐭's life was cut short. 𝐒𝐽 wasn't allowed to come into the room because of 𝐿𝐭's request. She said to Mitsuki, who was able to come in, that if 𝐒𝐽 was to see her, he will try to heal her, and that it pains 𝐿𝐭 to see 𝐒𝐽's face of sadness. Sadly, 𝐒𝐽 was never able to see his mother for a long time. 𝐒𝐽 was home when he got a call from the hospital. They gave him the news. "I'm sorry, Midoriya. Your mom didn't make it." 𝐒𝐽 didn't know what numbness felt until then. Everything in his life crumbled around him. The one person he loved so dear was gone. And he didn't get to see her in her final moments. He watched the clock click by, staring at the door, hoping for his mom to come back. Maybe it was a joke. He should have been there. He could have healed her. But his mom didn't let him. She made him make that promise. Mitsuki and Katsuki hadn't seen 𝐒𝐽 in a few days, leaving the 5-year-old alone at the house. They probably forgot or something. Probably too distracted by losing 𝐿𝐭. 𝐒𝐽 hadn't eaten or taken care of himself in a while. Eventually, after 20 hours of nothingness, 𝐒𝐽 decided to call someone. Not Katsuki. Or Mitsuki. No. His dad. His mom allowed 𝐒𝐽 to call or at least talk to his dad once a year. He never understood why, but he respected his mom's wishes. Now that she is gone, he can talk with him. Dialing the number, 𝐒𝐽's heart thumped in his chest. After a few rings, he heard his dad say hello. At that voice, 𝐒𝐽 broke down, crying his little heart out. His dad asked what was wrong, and 𝐒𝐽 slowly explained what happened to his mom. His dad talked with 𝐒𝐽 for hours, comforting him. Eventually, the conversation swayed to 𝐒𝐽 talking about quirks. Dad asked what his quirk was, and 𝐒𝐽 explained his quirk and his abilities, not realizing what his father was thinking. After saying his hair was the source, Dad said he will be coming over to Japan to see the quirk in action and to see him. 𝐒𝐽, who was very excited, agreed. Hanging up the phone, 𝐒𝐽 ran around the house cleaning up and himself, eating and preparing his piano to be played for his dad. Only 2 hours later, there was a knock at the door. Gasping, he ran to the door and opened it. His dad was there with absolutely nothing. He smiled and hugged the boy, brushing his hand against Izuku's long hair. His hair was now midway at his shins. Izuku was oblivious to the fact that his father took only 2 hours to get to his house from America. Izuku rushed into the house, forgetting about his mom, and went to the living room. He had his piano set up near the couch so Dad could relax. Dad asked him to see the quirk in action, pulling up his sleeve which had a jagged scar. Smiling, he told him to sit down on the couch. Izuku sat on the piano's bench and hit a few keys. Once he knew it was okay to play, he grabbed his hair and wrapped it around his dad's arm, covering the scar. Telling his dad not to panic, Izuku sat down and began to play the song. Closing his eyes, he recited the song. On the other side, his dad was grinning wildly. He didn't give a crp that 𝐭𝐻 had died, he lost feelings for her years ago. He enjoyed talking to Izuku and hated how 𝐭𝐻 refused Izuku to talk to him more. Glad Izuku called him, he was happy to comfort the young child. But the best part was when Izuku said what his quirk was. Truly, he doesn't live in America. Rather Japan. All for One, his villain name, continues to correct his villainous empire, wanting it to be perfect or at least moldable for a successor. He found a young boy who had murdered his family. All for One brought him in, taking care of him, choosing him to be his successor. That was a few years ago. When he left the Midoriya household all those years ago, it was close to when he found Tenko Shimura. After talking with Izuku, he told his comrades that he will be gone for a few days, not telling the reason for his departure. He had a feeling something good was going to come from this. And right he was. All for One stared at Izuku, whose hair was now glowing a bright neon. Looking down at his arm, saw the hair glow in waves. Watching his son play the piano made him think of a few ideas. What once was mine, Izuku sang, finishing the song. Look at your arm. It should be healed. Izuku said, now standing, unraveling his curly long hair from his dad's arm. Dad didn't say anything, staring at his arm. Izuku frowned at no response. He sat beside Dad, looking up at his face. Dad! He pulled away from his hair, touching where the scar once was. It worked. See? Dad! That scar was 5 years old. All for One whispered. Here. Can you say that again? Izuku asked, leaning in. Looking at his dad, he tilted his head. Hey! Izuku! How would you like to come with me? I have a surprise for you. All for One asked, not taking his eyes off his healed arm. Oh my gosh! I would love to. Let's go now. Izuku jumped up from the couch, grabbing his dad's hand. Pulling on them, he whined when he didn't budge. Dad. Yes. His dad looked up, his red eyes piercing Izuku's eyes. You okay? Oh. Yes, I am fine. Let's go, Izuku, my son. We have no time to lose. He stood up, grinning. Yay! Izuku ran around in circles. He skidded to a stop, he whipped around. He frowned when he saw his dad staring at his hair. Dad! He looked up. Let's go, Izuku. Don't bring anything with you. No shoes, no money. Just yourself. Okay. Where are we going? Izuku asked, playing with his hair. It's a surprise. His dad winked. Come on, go to the door. I want to get something first. Izuku smiled and nodded. His hair swayed behind him while he left the living room. The death of his mom was forgotten. Behind, All for One smirked, here we go. Looking around the room, his smirk turned to a grin. Goodbye, hell. Pressing down on a few keys, he listened and recalled the memory of Izuku's song. He won't be using this anymore. Dad! Izuku whined from the other room. Kmoon! I'm coming, son. All for One came into the foyer, grinning at Izuku, who was taking his shoes off. Look! My shoes are off, just like you asked. Can we go? I'm super excited for your surprise. I can see that, son. Let's go. All for One announced, opening the front door for Izuku. Can you close your eyes for me? Yep. Let go of your hair, Aizu. Sorry. Okay, I want you to count to 10. Can you do that, for me? All for One asked. Yep. Fantastic. Please start. All for One said. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. SS7, 8 Nerd. Izuku asked, feeling very sleepy. What's going on? He yawned once more, wanting to sleep. Izuku, one more number. You can do it. Izuku felt himself fall into the world of nightmares and dreams. Good boy, All for One praised, grabbing Izuku before he fell. Holding him, bridal style, he called upon a quirk. A teleportation quirk. Let's go home. All for One activated the quirk, a grayish portal opened up. Smirking, he closed the door and walked into the portal. On the other side of the portal, All for One appeared inside a lush green forest. Closing the portal, he looked at the young boy in his arms. His hair was touching the dirt, or don't get your precious hair dirty. All for One said, grabbing Izuku's hair and tucking it into Izuku's arm and hip. You might be wondering, why isn't All for One stealing Izuku's quirk? Well, it's simple. The man loves his son very much. It pained him that he couldn't talk with Izuku. If he took his quirk away, Izuku would have no reason to stay with him. Or at least, All for One won't have a good reason to keep him. Having Izuku with him, he will be able to stay with Izuku for the rest of his eternal life and take care of him. Also, if he had the quirk, he wasn't sure if he could heal himself. He didn't want to gamble it. Let's get our new home set up, he said, raising a hand into the air. Thinking of an image, All for One activated his quirk. A house or the start of one slowly began to appear into existence. He watched as the ideal house appeared in front of him, in the middle of nowhere. Perfect! He smirked. Once the house was done, he stopped the quirk. Now, one last thing. Your memories. He tightens his hold on Izuku. The silence of the woods made it all feel more complete. Placing a hand on Izuku's forehead, he activated a memory-altering quirk. Now, my perfect son will be mine. His perfect quirk and perfect personality. He will only know how horrible the world is, and that he needs to stay in the cabin and will never leave. I will be there for him, and he will be there for me. He will only remember me, not his mother or friends. Only me. He will forget what society really is. He will only remember the good times he had with me in the cabin. It will be perfect. Completing the altering, he grinned. Let's go in and continue our life together, Izuku. Today's the day where I do the exact same thing I did yesterday. Izuku cheered, jumping out of his bed. Izuku is a 15-year-old boy who lives with his dad in Japan in a cottage that seems to be in the middle of nowhere. The cottage is rather simple. Only 2 levels, a basement and a top floor. Izuku's bedroom and dad's room are on the top level with a kitchen, music room, bathroom, living room and foyer. The basement is off limits. But Izuku guesses the basement is his dad's office. Izuku spends his days in the house, never leaving. His dad forbids it, saying it's very dangerous and people would want his quirk. Dad also says anyone can take a quirk and Izuku has a very strong one. If he encounters anyone other than his dad, they will try to take it. His dad said he would never take it, saying he loves him. Which makes sense because his mother abused him and didn't love him. Dad said she was hit by a car and died when he was only. Izuku had always felt depressed thinking about her, but his dad said she deserved it after what she did to him. Anyway, Izuku got up, making sure his hair wasn't caught on anything. His hair was so long. Like 70 feet long. It doesn't help that his hair is rather curly and gets knotted. Luckily, when his dad comes home, he helps him undo the knots. Oh. Speaking of hair, Izuku's quirk is his healing hair. If he sings healing incantation and someone brushes or is wrapped with it, it heals them. Sometimes his dad comes home from work and is injured. Izuku always feels valuable when he heals his father from the biggest of injuries to the littlest. The healing process is rather simple. He sits down with an instrument and sings a special song. His dad either wraps his hair around the injury or just brushes it. Izuku doesn't understand why his dad brushes his hair. He isn't injured when he does it. Maybe he just likes to listen to him sing. Yeah, that's it. His dad loves him very much. Every time he comes home from work, he spends his time with him. Though, sometimes he goes to the basement and stays there for hours. But that rarely happens. Also, his dad comes home through the front door. Always. Except for a few times. One of those times was when he was practicing the harp in the living room. He was only 10 years old, he was 100% focused and didn't notice a grey silvery goop appear in the middle of the room. It made Izuku scream. His dad appeared falling to the ground. With only one glance, Izuku fell to the ground, quickly wrapping his hair around his dad who was bleeding. Izuku's eyes filled with tears, he didn't know what he was doing. He was acting off of instinct. Wrapping his hair around anything that looked like it was bleeding. His dad wasn't talking, his face looked wrecked. Izuku didn't bother to bring the harp closer. He grabbed his dad's hand and sang. With tears dripping down his face. He closed his eyes, praying his dad would be okay. After he finished the song, he broke down. Sobbing until he heard his dad cough. Izuku quickly opened his eyes and hugged his dad with only one glance. They hugged each other for hours, talking only a bit. His dad didn't want to let go, neither did Izuku. Izuku asked what happened after a bit. His dad said a work injury. After that moment, Izuku took his job to heal his dad, the #1 priority in his life. Izuku sighed, looking around his room. It's a small bedroom. He rarely spends his time in his room, he'd rather spend it with his dad or do activities. Plus, his dad always tells him to stay outside his room for some reason. He does it because of love. The room has his bed, which is twin-sized, a closet and a dresser. The floor is wood and the wall is white wallpaper. And his favorite part of his room is the window. The window can be opened and there is a ledge. Izuku can sit on the ledge and look outside. He loves opening the window and feeling the breeze and hearing the animals. Izuku smiles, going to the window. Opening the latches, he pushes the panes open. Sighing when he felt a crisp breeze. He sits on the ledge, looking around outside. The view resides of forestry. There is nothing but forest. Though, he could see a path that his dad takes when he goes to work. The path was dirt, clear of trees. Izuku looked around the trees, hoping to see a bird or squirrel. Or even a deer. He waited for a bit, sighing when he saw nothing appear. He got off the ledge and shut the window. And walked over to the door. Opening the door, he left the door open, allowing his hair to follow behind. He knocked on his dad's bedroom door, seeing if he was there or not. The bedrooms were beside each other. After a few knocks, he frowned when he didn't hear anything. Guess he went to work. Izuku continued down the hall, going to the kitchen. The hall opened to a kitchen that led to a living room and the foyer. The kitchen was basic according to his dad. It had an island with bar stools around it. And had a fridge, dishwasher, sink, cupboards and oven. In that order. The washing machine and dryer were in a closet near the fridge. He smiled when he saw a plate of steamed rice and a bowl of miso soup on the island. A note was beside the food that was made by his dad. Picking up the note, he noticed how the food was still steaming. His dad must have left not that long ago. His dad always left notes when he left the cottage. If he was in the basement, he wouldn't have left one. The note said, "Good morning, Aizu. I have some work to do in town. I'll be back around if you can do some chores, that would be amazing. There is some breakfast in the kitchen, please eat all of it. You're too skinny. Also, you may want to make some lunch for yourself when the time comes. I love you so much, Aizu. Have a good day." Dad. Izuku giggles, it is true. He is rather skinny. Izuku tucked the note in his breath's pocket. He kept all his dad's notes under his bed in a box. Opening up a drawer, he grabs chopsticks and a spoon. Sitting on a bar stool, he pulls the dishes closer to him. Picking up the spoon, he scoops some miso soup and puts it in his mouth. He ate his breakfast slowly, knowing his day is going to be rather slow. After he was done, he picked up the dishes and placed them inside the sink to be cleaned when he did the dishes. He smiled when he saw his dad's #1 dad mug in the sink that had a few drops of coffee inside. He made that all by himself when his dad brought home tools to make mugs. Izuku sighed, chores time. Super fun. He never enjoyed doing it, but it makes his dad very happy. And he will do anything to make him happy. Going to the kitchen closet which had the washing machine and dryer. Plus all the cleaning products. Izuku looked at all the tools. There you are. Izuku grabbed the broom and dustpan. The closet did not have a vacuum. His dad talked about them saying they are loud and might suck up all his hair. Izuku was frightened of it and was glad his dad never got one. Instead, he has a broom. Also, the house has no carpets. All the floor is hardwood. It makes sweeping easier. Taking the tool with him, he began sweeping the kitchen, then the living room. The living room is very simple. It has a couch, tables and bookcases. Izuku swept the room, moving the couch to get underneath. He made sure his hair didn't get caught on anything, which was fairly challenging. But with years of practice, it has gotten easier. Izuku moved to the foyer. It had the main door and a closet with his dad's coats. A shoe rack with only his dad's shoes. He doesn't have any shoes or coats as he doesn't go outside. The door to the basement is there as well. Right beside the closet. Izuku sometimes would think rebellious and try to go down. He has only ever opened the door which showed darkness and a staircase. Izuku was so scared to anger his dad, he slammed the door. He only did those types of things when he was home alone. He swept through the foyer, sweeping up excess dirt. After that room, he walked through the house to the hall. Cleaning the hall up, he swept the music room and his own room. Afterwards, he glanced at his dad's room. Should I? Izuku asked. He shook his head. He shouldn't. It's his dad's privacy. Izuku left the broom and dustpan on the wall. He walked back to his room and changed into a new set of clothes. The clothes were briefs and a t-shirt which was yellow and black. His clothes were unique. Because of his hair, he cannot take his shirt off over his head. His shirts have a zipper in the back where he can zip them down and take them off. Izuku changed into the clothes, throwing his dirty clothes in the hamper. Traveling back to the cleaning closet, he dropped off the broom and he picked up the polish and wax, which were a container and a yellow cloth. Starting off in the kitchen, he went down on his knees and began to use the products. He made sure to move his hair off the newly cleaned areas. Izuku moved room to room, groaning when his hair got a bit messy. After cleaning the floors, he walked to the bathroom which was beside the music room. Shoot, I forgot to sweep in here. Too late now. Izuku walked inside and started a bath. He grabbed all his hair and washed it free from the cleaning products. Once it was done, which took way too long, he sat down on the toilet seat. Izuku waited a bit, around 30 minutes for the products to dry. In the meantime, he looked at himself in the mirror. He began to sing a song his dad would sing to him when he was younger. He watched his hair glow neon. His hair was a bit damp so the color wasn't as bright. Any song he sings causes his quirk to activate. He guesses healing incantation is stronger. After singing for a bit, Izuku walked back out. Before stepping out, he touched the floor. Okay. Dryer. Izuku walked back to the closet, picking up a mop. He did the same thing, cleaning every room, even more, careful in making sure his hair didn't get dirty. Placing the polish, wax and mop back into the closet. He saw his dad's clothes on the washer. Bringing the pile to the floor, he started sorting. He then opened the door and stuffed the clothes into it. I'll do my own clothes tomorrow. Picking up the fluids, he poured them into the correct slots and pressed the start button. Izuku sat back on the floor, watching the clothes swoosh around. It's going to be a bit. Maybe I should start dusting. Izuku thought, sitting back up. He grabbed the dustpan and mini brush. Izuku started off in the kitchen, dusting the hanging lights, countertops, you name it. Once that room was done, he moved to the next one. He stopped when he heard the washer beep. He placed the items on the floor of the hall and walked to the closet. Taking out the clothes, he opened the dryer and stuffed them inside. Changing the paper thingy. What are they called? I don't know. Izuku closed the door and turned the dryer on. Izuku was about to go to the living room but stopped himself. Dishes. He groaned. He traveled to the kitchen, picking up a cloth and poured some dish soap onto it. Looking at the sink, he mentally cheered when he saw only a small pile of dishes. Picking up a few pots that were very messy, he opened up the dishwasher and placed them in the correct slots. He moved on to the cups, plates and bowls. He used the cloth to clean some of the excess dirt and placed them into the dishwasher. Afterwards, he grabbed the utensils and tossed them into the holder. Drying his hands, Izuku yawned, walking back to the living room to rest. "Gosh, I'm tired," Izuku says, rubbing his eyes as he flopped back on the couch. Looking at the clock, he groaned. "It's only 11. I started at 10. Geez." Standing back up, he walked over to the bookcase. Looking at the books he could read. The bookcase was filled to the brim with books. And he had read every single one. Picking out one that was about a cat and a mouse, he sat back down on the couch. Opening the book to the first page, he started reading. The time flew by after he started reading. Once he flipped to the last page and finished the book, he glanced back up at the clock. "Hey! It's 1. Dad will be home soon." Izuku closed the book, standing back up to put them back into the bookcase. After he did that, he walked through the living room and the kitchen. Entering the hall, he traveled to the music room. The music room had all his instruments, ranging from a harp to a drum set. His dad got every single one for no reason. He said he got them just because he loved him. And to educate him. Izuku smiled, walking inside the room. He sat down in front of the grand piano. Izuku believed the music room was the biggest room on the top level. Which confused him. Why did he get such a big room to practice music? Izuku shook his head. His dad loves him, that's it. Izuku sighed when he realized he just sat down and needed to stand up to grab the music sheets. Standing back up, he walked over to a bookcase. It had boxes that had music sheets and practice songs. The boxes were organized into sections that had different instrument labels. Izuku pulled out the piano box. Looking through the box, he pulled out a practice sheet. Grabbing it, he pushed the box back to where it was. Going to the grand piano, he placed the sheet on the stand. Cracking his knuckles, he pressed down on a few keys. Izuku went through the practice sheet. His dad had him play certain songs and present them in front of him. Dad would mark him depending on how well he played the instrument. Izuku sighed when he finished the sheet. Looking at the door that was open, he frowned. "Maybe I should brush my hair in case I need to heal Dad." Izuku sat up, grabbing the sheet. Putting the paper in the right box, he left the room. Izuku went to the bathroom and picked out a brush. Leaving the room, careful to not trip on his hair, he sat back down on the living room couch. Bunching up his hair, he pulled it. He winced when he felt his hair get caught on a few corners. After a few minutes of pulling, he mentally cheered when he saw the last of his green hair flow around the corner. Once he got the last of it, he pilled the hair in a semi-pile. Taking the brush in his hand once again, he started brushing his hair at the ends. He went through his hair, making sure the hair was brushed 100%. Which took a long time. After what seemed to be forever, he finished. Izuku tossed the hairbrush to the side. He was very tired now. Looking up at a clock, he smiled. Finally. Dad should be home at any moment. Somewhere else Hitoshi Shinso glared at the hologram that showed his You a Hero course exam results. "I'm sorry but you have not made it into the hero course. However, you did." Hitoshi stopped listening to All Might after that. He knew it. His quirk did SHT to the robots. He only got a few points. He could have used his quirk and brainwashed someone to use their quirk and destroy the robots for him. Sadly, he didn't think about that at the moment. He thought of it when he left the arena. "God, I'm so stupid." Hitoshi buried his face into his hands. He tried so hard to get into the hero course. His parents were so proud of him for wanting to be a hero. He wanted to make them proud and prove to everyone he doesn't have a villain quirk. Sadly, it was never meant to be. He did okay in the written exam but failed in the practical. Maybe he really had a villain quirk. Hitoshi flinched when he heard his mom call him for an early dinner. Coming. He left his room, throwing out the exam results in the garbage. Walking into the kitchen, he forced a smile. "Hey Mom and Dad." "Hey, son." His dad smiled. "So, what is the news?" What news?" Hitoshi asked, sitting down at the table. "You, of course. Did you get in?" His mom asked, passing out the food to his dad and him. No." Hitoshi mumbled. His parents gasped. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Hitoshi. Was that for the hero course or general studies? Mom asked, trying to be optimistic. I failed in the hero course exam. I'm not sure about general studies. Hitoshi said, rubbing the back of his neck. What did the results say about the general studies? His dad asked who started eating. I haven't looked at them yet. Hitoshi said. Maybe he got into you, that would be great. However, he wanted to be in the hero course, not general studies. It's not the same. Well, you should. Mom said. Yeah. I will. After dinner, he told his mom he will be going to the forest and go on a hike before he looked at his results. His mom was a bit hesitant, saying he should see it first. Hitoshi said he wanted to get some air and think about his future. He didn't want to look at the results and see that he failed general studies as well. Grabbing his shoes and changing into hiking gear, he left the house. Walking along the sidewalk, he looked down. Damn it! Hitoshi changed his course once he saw the forest come into view. God! I'm so tired. Hitoshi entered the forest and began to hike down the trail thinking about his future. His fed-up future. Izuku was sitting on the warm sofa in the living room with a book in hand. Playing with the corner of the page, he read the text in a focused mindset. It was just around the time his dad would be home. His hair ran throughout the house, mostly bunched up where he sat today. When he heard a few sounds at the door, he shot up. Dad! Izuku dashed off the couch and booked it to the foyer. He began to sway side to side waiting for Dad to walk inside the house. Dad was making some clicks and knocks behind the door like he always did. The door slowly opened up and in came Dad, who wore a black suit with 3 plastic bags of food hanging from his forearms. Hello, Dad. Dad smiled warmly. Hey Izu, how are you? I'm good. Super excited you are home now. You? Izuku asked, following his dad. The man was taking off his shoes with one hand and the bags in the other. I'm glad to hear that. Dad said, walking into the living room and kitchen. He stepped over Izuku's hair when it crossed his path. I see that you cleaned the house beautifully. Izuku giggled, yeah I did. Dad and Izuku arrived inside the kitchen. One dropped off the groceries and the other sat down on a stool. Did anything else? Dad asked, putting the carrots inside the fridge. Izuku rested his head on his hand. Not really. The usual. Dad chuckled, seems fun. Izuku laughed, it sorta was. Dad closed up the cupboards and the fridge. He threw the bags inside the garbage and turned to face his son. I need to brush your hair now. Dad said, get an instrument of your choice, I'll be in the living room, are you hurt? Izuku asked as he got off the stool. No, I just want to brush your hair. Oh okay. Izuku went off walking to the music room. Dad always tended to act strictly after a hard day at work. He comes home and asks to brush Izuku's hair rather quickly. It used to bug Izuku that Dad didn't want to play with him right after a day of not being with him. After a while of seeing Dad in that mood, Izuku learned to adapt to it. Izuku realized how relaxing and nice it was to have his hair brushed by Dad. Izuku grabbed a guitar from the string instrument rack and left to go to the living room. He sat down on the little chair Dad set up for this very purpose. The chair was directly in front of the sofa. Dad was sitting on the sofa behind the little chair with a brush in hand. Izuku smiled and sat in front of his dad on the little chair. Ready? Dad asked, bringing the brush up to Izuku's green puffy hair. Ready? Izuku beamed, resting the guitar in his lap and strumming the strings. Izuku hummed a song, strumming the intro of the song. Dad began to brush the top of the hair and slowly bring it down to the different parts of Izuku's hair. Flower Izuku sang the song. Closing his eyes, he played the song and sang, loving the feeling of a brush flowing through his hair. Dad grew silent, focusing on the task at hand. His hair glowed a bright neon green. What once was mine, Izuku finished the song off, smiling brightly. He pulled the guitar away from his chest and turned his head around to see his dad. Dad had placed the brush on the couch and wrapped his arms around Izuku. Izuku giggled and sat the guitar on the little chair when he was pulled off it. He was pulled into the arms of Dad, who sat him down on his lap. His back facing Dad's chest. Thank you Izu, I feel much better. Oh, I'm glad. Dad nuzzled his face into Izuku's curls, I love you, Aizu, did you know that? Izuku giggled, rubbing a hand on Dad's leg. Of course I know that. You tell me every single day. Do you love me? Dad pressed, freezing his movements. Izuku wiggled uncomfortably. He hated how his dad questioned his love for him. He should know Izuku loves him very much. I love you too, Dad. Dad smiled, exactly what I like to hear. Dad. Dad hummed. Are you free for the rest of today? Dad paused to think. I have a bit of work I need to do in the basement. But afterwards when I am done, we can do whatever you want. He smiled, squeezing Izuku. What? What's wrong? Dad asked, pulling Izuku away from his chest so he could see Izuku's face. Izuku had to twist his head around to face Dad. The boy's face was sorrowful. I thought you were done with work for today. Izuku looked away, frown dressing his face. Dad shook his head. No, I'm not. I never said such a thing. Oh, Izuku swung his legs off Dad's legs and stood up. I guess I'll see you later. Wait, Dad shot his hand at Izuku's. You're upset. Izuku looked back at his dad. Izuku, spit it out. Dad snapped, tightening his hold on Izuku's forearm. Izuku's breath hitched and in a whisper, he uttered, I want to spend time with you, Dad. Dad's hold lightened. Why? I miss you. I love it when we spend time with each other and I wish we could be together even more. You make me happy, you're my dad, I love you. Izuku fell into Dad's lap and hugged him close. Dad didn't say anything, making Izuku slightly panic. Did he say something wrong? You didn't say anything wrong. No. Izuku glanced up, inwardly scolding himself for muttering it out loud. I miss you so much, Izuku. There's never a day where I don't think about you. Dad said, nudging Izuku away from his chest. He brought a hand up to caress Izuku's cheek. I know how you feel about me doing work, but it's a mandatory thing. Is there any way where you could do it at home? Izuku asked, shoulders raising. Yes, Dad chuckled, that would mean I would do it in the basement. Izuku frowned. Oh. Upstairs. Dad shook his head. No can do. I can only do it in the basement. Why though? Izuku whined, throwing his arms up in the air. Izuku, no whining. Dad scolded, patting Izuku's head. Izuku giggled in response, sorry. Whenever Izuku made a noise that irritated his dad, Dad would tell him to stop, then would pat Izuku's head. It always made him giggle. Dad smiled, leaving his hands in Izuku's hands. My job is private. I talk to people online and I can't have you walking in and people see you. That made Izuku flinch. Yeah. Maybe you're right. Why am I right? Dad asked, standing up. He towered over Izuku, the boy only going up to the middle of his chest. Izuku stood up straight, twiddling his fingers. People can and will steal my abilities. Exactly, what happens if your healing ability is stolen? Dad asked, picking up the brush and placing the guitar and brush on the couch pillow. He grabbed the little stool and tossed it into a corner. He changed his path to be heading towards the kitchen. Izuku followed, right on Dad's tail. I won't be able to heal you. Correct. Dad opened up the fridge and took out a carton of juice. Closing it, he asked, want some? Yes, please. Izuku sat down on a stool. Dad nodded, clasping the door handle to a cupboard. Pulling it open, he picked a wooden cup and a glass one. Closing the cupboard, he placed the cups beside the orange juice. He turned to face Izuku and started pouring out the drink. See how I have to do my job downstairs? Izuku wrapped a hand around the wooden cup he was given. Bringing the cup up to his lips, he sipped the drink for a few seconds before he placed the cup back down on the island. Still. It makes me wonder what's your job. Izuku, you know not to question me about that. Dad said, sitting down beside him. Sorry. Izuku glanced down. I still wonder. I know you do. Do you want a hint? Hey. Dad chuckled. Want a hint on what I do? Izuku nodded quickly, turning to the side to face him. Never would he have thought that his dad would willingly tell him what he does for a living. Why did Dad want to tell him that? Was he feeling bad? It almost gave Izuku whiplash because of it. Okay, I'll only tell you this once. Izuku smiled, okay. I am in charge of a group that wants to change the world. Izuku ped his head to the side, heh. That's my hint. That makes zero sense. Izuku threw his hands in the air, frowning. Dad laughed, if you take a second to think you may figure it out. He took a long sip and placed the glass back down. Izuku placed a hand on his chin and began to think. He muttered away, ignoring the look on his dad's face. While you think about that, I got to do some work. I'll see you in a bit, Izuku. Dad stood up, tossed the cups into the sink and proceeded to head to the basement door. Izuku whipped his head up, wait. He jumped up from the stool and booked it to the basement door. Can I have a hug before you go? Dad looked over, a hand over the door handle to the basement. Of course. Izuku wrapped his arms around Dad's waist and hugged him tightly. How long will you be? Not long, Dad said, wrapping his arms around Izuku. He used a hand to glide along with Izuku's curls. Okay. Love you. I love you too, Izuku. Guess I should go. Izuku sniffed, letting go of his dad. Dad let go, stepping back a bit. What are the rules? Izuku paused. Dad never asked him that. He always knew Izuku would follow them and not break them. Why was Dad asking him? Izuku, what are the rules? Dad said sternly, gripping the door handle tightly after he let go of Izuku. No leaving the house, no going downstairs, no cutting my hair, and do not disrupt you. Izuku recited. The rules were engraved into his mind. Dad's hold on the handle loosened. Good. I'll see you in a bit, son. And with that, Dad opened and closed the basement door. Izuku stared at the door, his body freezing up. His breath hitched, throat tightening. He stepped back, a burning sensation in his eyes. Dad! Izuku managed to say, why? He crooked out, falling to the ground on his butt. Dad must have been annoyed with Izuku to do that. He left so abruptly. He seemed fine minutes ago. What happened? Did I do something? Izuku whispered, staring at the door. Obviously, he did something. Why else would Dad act like that? Unless it has to do with something about work. Izuku crossed his legs into a crisscross position and placed a hand on his chin. He thought back to what his dad said. The only thing he could think about was the hint. A leader of a group that wants to change the world. What does that mean? Hours later, Izuku was lying down on the couch, staring at the foyer, waiting for Dad to appear out of the door. He didn't get far thinking about the hint. Maybe that's why Dad gave him a hint. He knows Izuku could never figure it out. Instead of spending his time thinking about it, he got up from the floor and laid down on the couch. There wasn't much to do in the living room. He did leave his guitar in the room, so he started to play a few songs while he laid down. He made sure to keep an eye on the door just in case. After a bit, he left the room to hang the guitar in the music room and went to the washroom. He grabbed a throw blanket from his room and laid back down on the couch. He cuddled close to the blanket, staring at the door. Shooting up from the couch when he felt his eyes start to droop. He didn't want to fall asleep yet. He's worried about his dad and why he acted in such a way. And this is where Izuku is now, hair wrapped around his body and the rest of his hair piled on top of him. Every time he felt his eyes droop, he quickly grabbed his hair and pulled on it tightly. The pain woke him up quickly. Izuku sighed, rubbing his face with a hand. How much longer? He hung a hand off the side of the couch. I wonder what he's doing. Ah! Izuku yelped, falling off the couch when he heard a yell coming from the door. He shielded his body with his forearms from the hard flooring. Groaning, he turned over onto his back. He lightly rubbed his elbows that were now throbbing. What was that? Izuku sat up, using a hand to unwrap some of his hair that was hooked on a few joints. He stared at the basement door. Did it come from there? Izuku stood up, slowly walking over to the door. He felt a shiver of fear course through his veins. He knew he shouldn't be doing this. Especially when Dad asked him to recite the rules. The quietness of the house made it so much scarier. He pressed a hand onto the basement door when he arrived at the foyer. Izuku didn't hear any noises, but the yell he heard coming from the basement made him quiver. Maybe Dad was hurt. Izuku's eyes widened. What if Dad got hurt and fainted? He felt the urge to bang onto the basement door and ask Dad if he was okay. But he couldn't. It was a rule that he can't go downstairs. He also shouldn't be eavesdropping. In fact, he shouldn't be near the door at all. But whenever he made an effort to go to his room, dark thoughts came rushing it. He couldn't just leave. What if Dad got hurt and needed Izuku? Izuku gulped. It's now or never. He pressed his ear against the door. Izuku's heart thumped loudly and shook his core. He's not allowed to be this close to the door. For all he knows, Dad is testing him. He could have yelled and pretended to have gotten hurt, testing if Izuku will obey the rules even at a very stressful moment. It's not a spoken rule, nor does Dad talk about it, but Izuku knows not to go near the basement door when Dad is working. It has happened before. Long ago, Izuku waited outside the door for Dad to come back up. He didn't hear or see anything. Why Dad didn't want him to be that close confused him. Once Dad opened the door and saw Izuku sitting on the floor, he was mad. Like zest. Izuku was grounded in his room for a week afterwards. Thinking about that made Izuku hesitate. I should go. He pulled his head off the door and sighed. I'm just too scared. Dad's okay. I know he is. Before he could walk away from the entrance, a voice made him stop. Hey. Izuku crept back to the door and pressed his ear to the wood. A voice could be heard coming from the basement. It was a muffled, deep voice. Dad. Izuku pressed his body even closer. He maneuvered to different places trying to hear the voice. Speak again, please. Izuku almost gave up his search, but luckily, something else was heard. A higher-pitched voice with a scratchy undertow. It seemed to be complaining. The voice drew out words and made noises Izuku could quickly place. Why is it whining? Izuku whispered, looking at the door through the corner of his eye. The voice stopped for a few seconds, then the same deep voice replaced it. The voices went back and forth, like a conversation. Is Dad talking to someone? Izuku took note of the two voices and mentally compared them to his dad's voice. The deeper one has to be Dad's. Izuku muttered. I wonder what he's talking about. Izuku lifted his head from the door and stared. This is what he means by talking with other people online. The other person couldn't have been staying downstairs. Even if it was, I would have heard them a bit more. He tried to decipher what they were talking about, but the only thing he understood was absolutely nothing. He only heard mumbles and muffled voices. If only I could open the door. Izuku raised a hand to the doorknob. Dad won't know because he is busy. He grabbed the handle and twisted it to the right. A loud creak made Izuku inwardly panic. Did Dad hear that? Izuku gulped down a knot growing in his throat and pushed the door forward. A wooden staircase with a little dull light bulb attached to the ceiling was seen. The staircase leads to two paths, one on the right and left. Izuku slowly let go of the doorknob and brought his hands close to his chest. Dad's going to be so mad. Izuku stepped back a bit, staring at the end of the steps. The voices seemed to have stopped talking. Was I imagining them? He shook his head. No, that can't be. Fear covered his face. Cold sweat began to seep down his sleeveless arms. This was the first time in his life he opened the door to the basement. And it was utterly terrifying. Everything seemed to have stopped, freaking Izuku even more. I should go. Izuku grabbed onto the doorknob and pulled it back. He took a step back to make way for the door. Before he closed the door, he heard the deeper voice speak. I apologize, young Tomura. I'll be back in one moment. Izuku's breath hitched, heart thumping loudly. He quickly shut the door close. Dad! Panic stripped his mind. The only thing he was thinking was run. Izuku rushed out of the foyer and collected his hair that was practically everywhere. The noise coming from the basement seemed to have increased. He normally loved the creaks of the basement stairs because that meant Dad was done work, but in this case, Izuku was petrified. The creaks became louder and that meant Dad would see him if he didn't run. He rushed through the house, grabbing his hair when he saw it. He couldn't have any trace of him being in the foyer. Near the basement door. Izuku didn't bother to look. He was too scared. He was scared if he looked back, he would see Dad right on his tail. A shiver going through his body, he swung his bedroom door open and closed it. He winced when the door slammed. Izuku shook his head and rushed over to his bed. All his green hair was piled near the door, none was on the outside. He pulled the blankets away from the bed and flopped on top. He grabbed them once more and pulled them up to his chin. Izuku turned away from the door and faced the other direction. He counted up to 10 to calm down his heart rate and breath. The house became very quiet. So quiet it freaked Izuku out. It was like Dad was never there. But Izuku was certain he heard Dad come up the stairs. Izuku tightened his hold on the blanket and squeezed his limbs together. Curling in on himself, he began to shake. He knew he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have opened the door or gotten close. He's screwed. Izuku held his breath for a few seconds, the breath too loud to hear the sounds coming from outside. He forced himself to stop shaking, focusing on his breath. His breath hitched when he heard the door to his room creak open. The floorboards creaked against the weight of a person. Izuku quickly shut his eyes and stilled his body, acting as if he was sleeping. His heart rate skyrocketed when he heard the creaks coming closer. It was muffled when the person stepped on his hair. The person loomed over his bed, eyes boring into Izuku's skull. Izuku felt shivers zap through his body at the feeling of being watched. "I must have heard something," Dad muttered. "He's asleep, he couldn't have done that. But perhaps." The voice trailed off as if he was muttering. Izuku was frozen. The footsteps and door were heard once more. The door closed with a creak. And after that, silence. Utter silence. 1 week later, a week had passed since Izuku opened the door to the basement. His dad didn't mention it at all that night. After his dad left his room, Izuku stayed in his bed for what seemed forever, frozen still. Izuku was so scared to leave his room when Dad called for dinner. He knew he needed to leave the room to not act suspicious. If he had stayed and ignored his dad, Dad would have figured out what Izuku had done. Dinner was something. Izuku tried to act normal, but his usual stuttering was frequent whenever he spoke. Dad had commented about it and Izuku quickly said he had a bad dream that made him scared and stuttery. Then, of course, Dad made him talk about the dream. Izuku narrowly got away with the lie. He said the dream was about being forced to go outside. After that lie was said, Dad stared at him for a few moments. Izuku felt sweat drip down his face. Izuku was shivering. Dad seemed to have believed the lie and walked over to Izuku and hugged him tightly, saying that will never happen. After dinner, Izuku allowed Dad to brush his hair then went to bed. Even the simple task of relaxing while his dad brushes his hair was stressful. Izuku was terrified. Dad didn't seem to have noticed what Izuku had done earlier that day. He acted normal, if anything, more lenient. He didn't get upset when Izuku wanted to leave right away when Dad finished doing his hair. He simply smiled and said goodnight. That night, Izuku slept with one eye open. At least, it felt like he was doing that. He listened to his dad walking down the hall to his room and getting settled. In the morning, everything was normal. Dad acted the same. And with that, Izuku's nerves lightened. He began to think Dad never noticed what he did at all. Seeing the proof and thinking about it, Izuku felt better. A week later, Izuku almost forgot what happened. He didn't feel anxious when he was near Dad or terrified of Dad finding it out. However, whenever Izuku was in the foyer or saw the basement door, he felt his blood run cold. Luckily, Izuku would use music to suppress any nerve-wracking thoughts. And it worked rather well. He'd got so distracted playing music, his thoughts were never an issue. One day 1 week later, Izuku was woken up by his dad who said he would be gone until around. Izuku expressed his annoyance by flopping back to bed, closing his eyes. He heard Dad sigh and sit down on the bed. He said he could buy Izuku some new music sheets. And with that, Izuku shot up from bed and hugged Dad so tight, he felt strain in his arms. Dad chuckled, saying he would be back in a bit. Izuku followed Dad to the door and waved him off. Now, Izuku was excited. And with that, Izuku began to do his daily morning routine. Though, the only difference from the usual was he took longer playing the piano and brushing his hair. Something about brushing his hair made him sad. The feeling of closeness he would have with his dad was gone from that moment. He was alone. Going to his bedroom, he sat down on the ledge. The cold breeze flowed through the window, hitting Izuku. He bundled up some of his hair and wrapped it around his body. Looking outside was something he loved to do. Dad never really liked Izuku doing it, but he loved it. He loved seeing the animals run around, the birds chirping and a few deer walking past the window. It amazed him of all the life around him. The peaceful life he wished everyone else in the world had. He hated how he had to stay inside the house. He sometimes wished he could go explore the forest. Maybe he should ask if he could go outside with Dad supervising. Dad could save him if anyone sees him. But will Dad allow that? Maybe if he shows he can heal Dad quicker, Dad will feel proud and allow it. Besides, what's the worst thing that could happen? Dad would be right by his side the whole time. There is no way anyone could take his quirk away. Dad would be there to save him. Plus, they can have so much fun playing outside. Smiling, Izuku jumped off the ledge and ran to the music room. Picking up his favorite guitar, he came into the living room and grabbed the stool that was in the corner. Putting it in front of the couch, Izuku sat down on the stool and placed the guitar in his hands. All he has to do is wait for Dad to come home. And that will take 2 more hours. Geez, at least I have some time to practice. Somewhere close to say the least, Hitoshi wasn't taking the whole not getting into the hero course all too well. He did get into the general studies program. Luckily, however, it wasn't the same at all. On the first day of going to U, he despised everything he saw. Everyone he saw was so happy that they were in U and got into the courses they wanted. Except him. He is stuck with general studies. In the orientation, he felt his heart crack when he saw the hero classes. So many looked like they had powerful quirks and got into U so easily. He did see a few who looked very generic, but he knew they must have strong quirks underneath. Altogether, each one looked like they had hero quirks, not villain ones. Maybe that's why he didn't get into U. He has a villain quirk. The judges must have seen it or him trying to use it, and in result of that, they failed him. Throughout the day, Hitoshi stayed quiet. A few of his classmates tried talking with him, but he glared and ignored their attempts. He's not there to make friends. After going home that day, he changed out of his uniform and left for the forest. He'd spend hours after school, walking around. He loved seeing nature in action and absolute quietness. He didn't hear anyone talk, he only would hear the chirps of birds. After spending a while in the forest, he decided to visit it every day after school. If he had homework, he would sit on the dirt and complete it. Though, if it required him to use his laptop, he would do it in the middle of the night. Hitoshi's sleeping schedule is absolute CRP. Sometimes he would even fall asleep in the forest, if he laid down. His parents never really cared when he got home, they only asked him to text them if he would be late. It seemed that every night, he was doing that. Only a few days after school started, Class 1A was attacked by villains in the USJ. That was the one time Hitoshi was glad that he wasn't in the hero course. After the events of it, Yui gave the students a week off. Hitoshi didn't get why the whole school got a week off. He was suspecting Class 1A to have 1 week off but not everyone. Perhaps, the teachers thought everyone was affected because of the villain attack. Ultimately, Hitoshi was glad he got to spend the week in the forest. He would spend the morning sleeping in, then leave the house around 1 and stay until the sun was going down. After spending so much time in it, Hitoshi got to explore. He saw a few abandoned buildings, old ruins and weirdly shaped rocks. He found a cafe in the outskirts of the forest which was rather small. If Hitoshi was hungry, he'd go to the cafe and buy some food. After so much exploring, he did not expect to see a house. A cottage of some sort. On the last day of the week off, Hitoshi decided to explore a section of the forest he had not seen yet. That area was sectioned off with a wooden fence that had barbed wire woven inside. Hitoshi thought it must have been a farmer's land. After he saw the fence, he came home and searched up if there were any farms around the forest using Google Maps. In the end, he found no farms in the suspected area. Jumping over the fence, Hitoshi made sure to stay clear of the wire, knowing it would be a pain if he got cut by it. After he cleared the fence, he began to walk around. It was rather odd. A few areas were cleared of trees. He saw stumps, food prints and a path. Only walking for 10 minutes, he found a dirt path. Where he found it, It could go two different ways. He followed it one way and it eventually arrived in a neighborhood. The odd part was the path was hidden. It was behind an abandoned house. The normal person could walk past the abandoned house and not see the path at all. To reach it, you would have to walk along the side of the house to the backyard, where a fence opened up, showing the path. Hitoshi, who was now curious, walked down the path. He arrived at the point where he found the path and hiked down the path. Going to the new charted areas, Hitoshi felt determination flow through his soul. The further he got, he saw some footprints going the opposite direction he was going. The footprints were heading towards the neighborhood. He theorized it might have been an old hiking trail, probably only a few people knew of it. But it was still odd. Hitoshi sometimes felt like he should turn the other way and go back, but he honestly couldn't. Something about it all was very odd. At one point, he checked the time using his phone. It felt like he was walking down the path for hours. It turned out, it was only 1. He left the house early, leaving around he must have been walking for an hour along the path in both directions. He began to think that the path maybe didn't have an ending. Fortunately, his prayer was answered. He found something. Another house. What the? To his surprise, the path led to a wooden log house that looked like it only had one story. It had a few windows, which were closed with a curtain. The house had a porch with a few plants growing out of the wood. The house looked like it was abandoned because of the plants and moss growing on the wood. The only thing that made the house look like someone lived there was the footprint he saw in the path and a few lights glowing in the windows. The curtains were white, so it was easy to see the lights inside the house. Someone must be inside. But I saw footprints going away from the house. Maybe they forgot to turn the lights off. Or maybe, multiple people live here. Taking his phone out of his pocket, he looked at the time. It's only 1:45, I can check it out. He may not go inside, but he could certainly look inside. Taking a few steps forward, he arrived at the front door. He noticed 3 different locks, locking the door shut. Here. Hitoshi glanced at the windows. There must be no one home. Someone locked the door and the footprint indicated. They left. I guess they forgot to turn off the lights. Or maybe they have the lights on so no one who comes by it thinks it's abandoned. Using a hand, he glided it across the green moss decorating the siding of the house. Now, I'm too curious. Grabbing a lock, each of the locks was different. One was a keyhole, passcode and combination lock. Using his other hand, he tried figuring out the passcode. In middle school, he took a small course that showed how to unlock locks. Trying to remember it, he pressed a few buttons on the passcode. Aha! After a few tries, he got it unlocked. Looks like doing every number code out there worked. Taking that lock off, he went to the next one. The combination lock. How? With that, Hitoshi tried different numbers and pulled it out to see if it worked. All his tries didn't work. What am I missing? Taking the lock once more, he tried one more code. However, he paused when he heard a few noises behind the door. Shuffling and a voice. A young voice who sounded like they were very excited for some reason. Hitoshi took a step back and stared at the door. The voice was saying a few things, which Hitoshi didn't understand. He could hear a few clicks and bangs coming from the door. The bangs sounded like it came from an instrument. Hitoshi stepped back one more time, having the urge to run into the trees. He stilled when he saw the door handle slowly move to the right. The door is opening. Hitoshi whispered. He felt his whole body freeze up. The door swung open and out came a high-pitched voice. Dad. You're early. Why didn't you open the door? You should know. You're probably not feeling too well, that's why you must have forgotten. Great thing I know how to open the locks. I have something to dash. The voice belonged to a boy with long green hair. He was pale with a bunch of freckles decorating his skin. He was holding a guitar in one hand and the other was holding the door handle. Hitoshi's mouth gaped. The boy seemed to have noticed Hitoshi because he let go of the door and brought the guitar close to his chest. Ahai! In a matter of seconds, Hitoshi saw the boy swing the guitar in the air and head straight towards Hitoshi's head. Unfortunately, Hitoshi didn't have the reflexes to avoid getting hit. Oh my gosh! Izuku leaped back, keeping the guitar close to his chest. A body lay there in the middle of the ground, unconscious. Everything went too fast for him to know what transpired. The next thing he knew was he was at the door, slamming the guitar he was using earlier into the head of the intruder. His body ended up moving on its own, running on pure adrenaline. He did what appeared to be the most effective way of getting rid of the stranger, hitting him with the closest object in hand. It was the first time he had ever seen a stranger. Dad made sure to fend off anybody who came in the radius of the house. Even if they did, Dad would never tell 𝐒𝐿. 𝐒𝐿 was always in the dark when it came to stuff like that. He had asked Dad a few times about it. He said it never happens. When Dad said he needed to be more cautious, were the times someone came close. It was always a few months after the events when Dad told him. Dad's defenses failed to work. Currently, a stranger got inside the house and it was his fault. He thought it was Dad coming in, so that's why he opened the door. Seeing a stranger with purple hair behind the door made his mind go into panic mode. After hitting the stranger with the guitar, he scampered away. The stranger flopped on top of the ground, almost falling on top of 𝐒𝐿. If he did not jump back in time, the stranger would be touching him. The thought alone made him shiver. Okay. Calm down 𝐒𝐿, you can do this, 𝐒𝐿 told himself, tightening his grasp on the guitar. The stranger looked more youthful, like his age, nothing close to his dad's age, much younger. He wondered why the stranger tried to break inside his house. Seriously? I question that. It's easy, 𝐒𝐿 said, flinching when the stranger shifted a tad. Okay. Quieter, in a whisper, 𝐒𝐿 continued. He wants my powers. That's why he came in. Glancing at the stranger's hair, 𝐒𝐿 wondered why a young person wanted his powers. His hair could make individuals younger, but the stranger is already young. Why would he want to be younger? His inner voice thought maybe the stranger was here for another motive, that the stranger did not want his hair. No. 𝐒𝐿 exclaimed, stepping back on his hair. He wants my powers. Dad says anyone could steal them. I cannot judge by age or appearance. 𝐒𝐿 reflected on his hair. His dad will be here soon. He will get cessed if he sees the stranger. Dad would probably think 𝐒𝐿 allowed the stranger in and wanted to be stolen. Well, he did technically let the stranger in. But that doesn't mean he wants to leave his dad. 𝐒𝐿 loves his dad. His dad protects him from the horrific dangers of the outside and makes sure he never leaves. By doing so, 𝐒𝐿 is protected. Dad makes him happy. He may not be at the house all the time, but he does make time out of his day to hang out with 𝐒𝐿. Sure, most of the time Dad brushes his hair, but honestly, what could 𝐒𝐿 do? 𝐒𝐿 loves healing his dad and he will do it until the day he dies. But for right now, 𝐒𝐿 needs to focus on the task at hand. Calculating out how to take care of the stranger. 𝐒𝐿 looked around the foyer. I need to hide him. If I throw him outside, Dad will see the body and ask me about it and that won't end well. Even if I wanted to, I can't leave the house because those are the rules. Hiding him inside the house is the only option. After I do, I need to tell Dad. He took a deep breath in. I think my closet should be good. Dad won't see or hear the stranger when he comes in. That will give me time to explain. Looking down at the stranger, he threw one of his hands in the air. Now or never. 𝐒𝐿 gently placed the guitar on the floor for the time being. Staring at the stranger, he waved his hand behind him searching for the ends of his hair. He had to pull on it to bring it all together due to it being so long. Taking the ends, he walked over to the stranger's legs as he dragged his hair across the floor. 𝐒𝐿 plopped himself on the ground and wrapped his hair around the stranger's ankle. Doing it to the other ankle, he stood up once it was done. Grabbing onto his hair and the guitar which was on the ground, he began to pull the stranger across the floor. He winced when the stranger's limbs banged into the walls. Turning the stranger around was rather annoying. He had to flip him so that his head was near the door instead of his legs. But due to the small space in the foyer, it was a more challenging task. When he finally swayed the stranger around, he started to walk backwards as he pulled. He kept an eye out for any signs of the stranger waking up. If he did, he would smash him with his trusty guitar. Right when he got into the hall, he quickened his pace getting to his room. Opening the door to his room, he slowly walked in. He winced once again when the stranger banged his head against the door frame. He awkwardly opened the closet door with only one hand, the hand holding the guitar while the other held tightly onto his hair. Izuku crouched down to untie his hair, whining when he saw a bit of dirt on his green hair. He mentally made a note to brush his hair out so that it didn't look suspicious when Dad came home. Putting his hair to the side, he threw his guitar on his bed and grabbed onto the stranger's legs. Walking around him, he let go of the legs and grabbed his forearms. He lifted his arms and used his back to put the stranger into a sitting position. Now putting his hands under the stranger's armpits, he lifted him and threw him into the closet, face first. Jumping up, Izuku ran to close the closet doors. He winced listening to the stranger's head hit the wall. Honestly, he was starting to feel a bit bad. He didn't want to hurt the stranger, but fear took over. If he did not do this, a much more terrible outcome would come out. He just hoped the stranger wouldn't wake up anytime soon, because if he did, Izuku would be screwed. The closet didn't have any locks, nor did his room. If the stranger awakened, he could easily escape. Sitting on his bed, he grabbed onto his guitar and held it close. Izuku everything was so stressful. He just wanted this to be a dream. It would be amazing if he just fell asleep and the stranger was gone. Or even better, Dad comes in and punishes the stranger for coming in and hugs Izuku, saying sorry for not protecting him. Most of all, he wouldn't be mad. And Izuku won't be punished. He knows his dad can get a bit obsessed when it comes to him wanting to leave the house or asking certain questions. Although, Izuku couldn't blame him. Dad has a stressful job in the city that requires his attention, and having his son ask stupid questions makes it so much worse. Perhaps Izuku should just shut up. It's not his dad's fault. Though, this stranger who got past his dad's defenses may be his dad's fault. He should have been there, not left it to his son. If his dad is so worried about him losing his powers, then why the heck is he not here? He leaves his son to take care of it. Really? Falling back on his bed, Izuku rubbed his face against the bedding. Why does it have to be like this? Pondering over things, his thoughts came to a stop when he heard a groan from the closet. Shooting up, Izuku stared at the cabinet. Looking directly at the door handle, he dreadfully hoped it would not open. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, please. Izuku thought. He felt his body clam up with sweat falling from his forehead. Another groan, then a thump. Izuku stayed silent, holding in his breath. The sounds of wind and forest could only be heard. Wait. He looked over to his room's window and found it close. If not that, where else? Izuku sighed when he heard snoring coming from the closet. He's asleep, Izuku whispered. Standing up from the bed, he inwardly groaned listening to the springs of the bed jingle. It seemed that everything wanted to be loud at the moment. Laying the guitar on the sheets, he tiptoed out of the room. He prayed the stranger would stay asleep for as long as possible. Out of his room, he quietly and slowly closed the door with a small click. Turning around, he trudged through the house, looking at the windows and doors. He decided after he finds where the wind is coming from, he will run back to his room and make sure the stranger does not come out. He will wait for his dad to arrive home and figure out a way to tell his dad a stranger is in the house without him getting mad. While going through the house, he couldn't find any open window or door. Where? I might be imagining things. Izuku recounted his steps back into the hall. The fear of the stranger waking up and escaping terrified him. Taking one more look at his bedroom door, he shook his head. He needed to focus. Walking out of the hallway, he felt a tug on his hair. Here. Looking at where he felt the tug, he ended up rolling his eyes. His hair was stuck underneath a box. Hold up. A box. Following where he felt the tug, he came across a square-shaped item. How did my hair get stuck by this little metal square thingy? Using a hand, he picked up the item and brought it close to his face. The item had a purple casing wrapped around the black glass. The case left holes at the bottom and a few buttons. Pressing on a button, he yelped. The item glowed a bright light. The black glass was now showing a picture. The picture showed a appealing waterfall with green trees surrounding it. It also had a few numbers indicating the time and date. Pressing his finger over the time, the screen changed to a number pad. Izuku tapped a few numbers which appeared on a bar. What the? 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 swiped a finger along the glass, watching it change to a different image. This is probably the stranger's. Dad would never leave something like this on the ground. Pocketing the item, he walked out of the hall. I'll ask Dad about it later. Dad probably has something like this. One time during breakfast, 𝐒𝐭𝐴 saw Dad tapping away on a mini square glass screen like the one he found. He did ask what it was, and Dad said it was nothing important and that he will tell him later. Later never came. If 𝐒𝐭𝐴 asks Dad about the item, he may learn a few things about the stranger. Or maybe he can use the phone as leverage. If the stranger ends up trying to escape, 𝐒𝐭𝐴 will show the item to him, and the stranger will be forced to stay. It does look important. When he was about to give up on searching for the wind, he heard a bird chirp. Hey! He twirled around, trying to find where the sound came from. All thoughts about the item dispersed. The closer he got to the foyer, the louder the bird sounded. Wait! Oh my gosh! The front door. 𝐒𝐭𝐴 sprinted to the foyer, almost slipping on his hair. He spotted the front door and yelped. It was open. The front door was open. He forgot to close it. 𝐒𝐭𝐴 slammed the door closed. Resting his forehead on the door, he sighed. He almost screwed up. If Dad had come home while the door was open, he would have thought 𝐒𝐭𝐴 ran away. Or was kidnapped. 𝐒𝐭𝐴 hated worrying his dad. In all honesty, 𝐒𝐭𝐴 is messing everything up. If it wasn't for his curious mind, he wouldn't have opened the door to the basement or unlocked the front door, letting in a stranger. Dad may not be here yet, but he will surely figure out that the stranger is here inside the house. 𝐒𝐿 may be okay at lying, but lying about such a big thing that's against the rules will not go unnoticed. Dad's not dumb. He knows he didn't break any of the rules. He just almost crossed the line. One of the rules is not talking to a stranger, which he hasn't yet. 𝐒𝐿 banged his head against the door, groaning at the pain it caused. I deserve that. Doing it once again, he felt tears trickle out the corner of his eyes. The fear of the whole situation crashed into him in waves. Squeezing his eyes shut, he used all his might to conceal the fresh hot tears from streaming down his cheeks. I have a stranger in my closet. 𝐒𝐿's voice cracked as he felt a few loud sobs escape from his mouth. I should have thrown him outside, but if I did that, I would have broken the biggest rule there is. Barely holding the will to keep the meltdown from happening, he crumpled down to the ground. Crying out in huge sobs, he covered his face with his hands. Letting himself break out, he allowed the scream of anguish to explode out of his mouth. He couldn't do this. He's not cut out for this. Where's Dad when you need him? If Dad was here, 𝐒𝐿 wouldn't have to worry about the stranger. Dad would take care of it. 𝐒𝐿 began to shiver while trying to calm himself down. Rubbing his face, he attempted to wipe away the tears that kept falling. I need to see calm down. Dad will probably be here soon and I can't be crying at the front door when he gets here. 𝐒𝐿 said aloud. Considering it, Dad should be home by now. If his maths is correct, Dad had been gone for a couple of hours and he said he would be home around dinner time. Though, on the flip side, 𝐒𝐿 doesn't know if that's true. His mind felt a bit hazy with the crying and adrenaline. For all he knows, Dad could be hours away or at the door. He couldn't tell. Either way, he needed to sober up. Sking in one last breath, he exhaled it to calm down. Thinking back at all the times Dad had comforted him when he was like this, he used those memories to help. Breathing in and out deeply, 𝐒𝐿 felt himself calming down. Getting up from the uncomfortable ground, he stretched his legs out while he stood. Making sure the item he got from the stranger was in his pocket and that the front door was fully closed locked, he left the foyer and headed back to his room. 𝐒𝐿 felt a grimace land on his face when he came face to face with the closet. Luckily, his tears had ceased before he pressed his ear to the closet. He wanted to check if the stranger was still inside and that he was still asleep. Hearing his snores, he sighed. The stranger is still in his closet. Sitting back on the bed, he allowed himself to think. His dad will be coming home soon, he thought. If he stays in his room until Dad comes home, he can keep watch and make sure the stranger stays inside. Looking around, he gently picked up the guitar that was on his bed and rested it on his lap. He whined at the obvious indents on the instruments. His dad will ask about it. Thinking about the potential lies he could say to his dad, he began to mindlessly tap at the wooden frame of the guitar. God, Izuku felt so guilty. He's trying to find ways to get out of a lie. He could tell the truth to his dad, but that would only lead to more questions, than eventually telling dad about the stranger. If it came to that, Izuku would be punished terribly. There won't be a good outcome no matter how he said it. He would be punished and the stranger. Well, he'd stopping his tapping at the guitar, he gasped. It was like a light bulb turned on. What if the stranger is Dad's friend? Okay, it sounds like a stretch, but think about it. Dad's not here and he allowed the stranger to get through his defenses. The stranger was able to get through some of the locks, and who else would be able to do that? The only possible explanation is that the stranger is Dad's friend. Dad probably didn't try to stop the stranger from coming in because he wanted him to come over. Maybe Dad wanted him to meet some of his friends. Izuku's not allowed friends, and that's okay. He doesn't need friends. He has his dad. And speaking of Dad, the sound of a door flying open could be heard from his room. I'm home. Izuku smiled. It all made sense now. Though, he was kinda mad at his dad for not telling him. If he knew, he wouldn't have whacked him with his guitar. It's okay though. He can heal Dad's friend with his hair. Making sure the guitar was okay, he got up from the bed and headed to the front door. Smiling once he was his dad, Izuku ran up and gave him a giant hug. A sound escaped Dad's mouth before he began to chuckle. What's the occasion? I'm just so happy you're here. Izuku murmured in Dad's fancy shirt. I missed you. He really did. I missed you too, Izuku. Dad said in a calm tone, making Izuku smile. He loved hearing him say that. Now, Dad said, after a few moments of silence. He gently pushed Izuku away from his chest and crouched down to his eye level. I think we should fix your hair. Look at it, it's so messy. He picked up a clump of green hair and began weaving it through his fingers. Izuku forced a smile on his face. After hearing that comment, Izuku almost facepalmed. He seriously forgot to brush his hair. What have you been doing today? Running around the house. Dad jested, laughing at his own comment. Taking off his boots and putting them on the shoe rack, he ventured off into the house. Izuku followed right behind, hoping Dad would make a comment about his friend. All he could hope for was that Dad doesn't get mad at him for locking his friend in a closet. He didn't want to make the first move and ask him about the friend. Because if he does that, Dad will ask where he is. Then he's screwed. He followed him into the living room while he mindlessly fiddled with the hem of his shirt. Be a dear and get me a brush, Dad said, sitting down on the couch. Izuku quickly nodded and scurried off to the bathroom. Before he rushed back out to the living room after getting a wooden brush, he took a second to check on Dad's friend. Sighing in relief seeing the closet door closed, he headed back to where his dad was sitting. Sorry about that, Dad. I needed to go check on something. Izuku explained his tardiness. Walking over to his dad, he frowned when he saw the stool in front of where he was sitting. Was he that slow? He's usually the one to set up the hair brushing. You're forgetting something. I am. Izuku questioned. He glanced down at his body and hands. What was he forgetting? He has the brush and the stool is in the correct place. Oh. Dad gave him an unimpressed look. Are you doing okay? Should I be worried? No, not at all. Give me 1 second to get a guitar, Izuku blurted out, waving his hands. You're wasting time already, just sit down, Dad sighed. Oh, okay. Izuku felt tears threaten to fall from his eyes. That never happened before. Dad always told Izuku to get an instrument before doing his hair. Was he really that slow? The burning urge burned at the back of his eyes, making it hard for Izuku to sound happy. Or even sing. Dad began to brush through his hair, scolding him when he spotted a few specks of dirt. Izuku tried his best to not cry or whimper while he sang. He ended up cringing at himself whenever his voice cracked. On the bright side, Dad rubbed his arm with his empty hand whenever a sob escaped out of him. As soon as he finished the song, he broke down in tears. You're okay, Aizu. Dad pulled Izuku off the stool and onto his lap. Tucking Izuku's head into his neck, he rocked him back and forth while he rubbed his back. I'm here. Don't cry. In the arms of his dad, Izuku allowed himself to let loose once again. He didn't say much, but he did certainly cry. "I'm here. I'm here," Dad repeated, allowing Izuku to rub his face against the crook of his neck. "I know it's tough." Izuku sniffed a few times before pulling back to look at his dad. Dad brushed away the tears with the back of his hand. "Life can suck sometimes, but you have to pull forward. Just because you got scolded, doesn't mean I don't love you." I know that. I didn't say." Dad smiled. "Doesn't matter. The fact's still correct. I need you to keep your head high, you can't have one little thing affect your mood." Izuku nodded. "True. Now then, I want you to explain what's up with you today. Your hair was a mess and you were slower than usual. What's going on?" Dad asked, concern clearly being shown in his eyes. Izuku gulped. I had my hair outside. Yeah. I had my window open and some of my hair touched the ground while I was sitting on the ledge. I was going to clean it, but when I was about to, you came home." Dad nodded. "I see. Next time, please make sure you don't get your hair dirty." Izuku nodded, though it was stiff. "Will do." How he wasn't having a heart attack was a mystery. "Why were you slow?" Dad asked, not waiting for Izuku to say something else. Don't lie. Tell me the truth." Izuku nodded. "I was checking on something. Earlier, I found this." He got off Dad's lap and moved the stool to the side. Skiing in a breath, he quickly thought of a plan. He could tell Dad his friend was here, however, Dad hasn't said anything about him yet. Was he surprising him? Perhaps, Izuku could hint at it. The item he found. The item is the friend's. If he were to show it, Dad will remember. Taking it out of his pocket, he showed the item glass upwards to his dad. Izuku quivered, waiting for a response from his dad. "How did you get this?" Not the reaction he was prepared to get. Dad said it in such a stern voice that Izuku felt his heart pop out of his chest. Spit it out." Izuku flinched, whispering he said, "I found it on the ground." "Where?" Dad snapped, stealing the item from his hands. Turning it back and forth, he clicked a few buttons. Izuku almost thought Dad was too distracted to listen to his answer. Before making a stupid mistake, Izuku responded. "I don't want to get in trouble." Dad narrowed his eyes. "Depending on where you found it and how you got it, will determine your punishment." Izuku's eyes widened. Although, what was he expecting? No matter how he says it or how much he lies, Dad will get mad. He smothered a sob. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Hey, sure it's okay." Dad gently pulled Izuku back onto his lap. "I'm not mad, I'm just confused. Why would you have this?" "Really? I don't know." All thoughts about the stranger and what happened before Dad came home left his mind. He was scared. Really scared. "Are you scared?" Izuku nodded. "Here." Dad frowned. "Why don't we talk about this after dinner, okay?" "Really? Sounds good." Izuku sniffed, leaning forward so that he was resting on Dad's chest. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Tell me all about it after dinner, okay?" Dad picked Izuku up from his lap and rested him on his hip. "What do you want for dinner?" I'm not that hungry." "You sure?" "I know food always makes me happy." Dad smiled, walking into the kitchen. "Want something quick or long?" "You pick, Dad." Izuku murmured. Setting him on a stool, Dad walked around the island and started to look through the fridge and cupboards. "What about spaghetti?" "Okay. Meatballs?" "Yep." Dad grabbed the items required and started prepping. Izuku took note that Dad slid the item into his pocket. He stared at it, fear rising. What is he going to say? What will he tell him? The truth. Tell him that his maybe friend tried to break in and that Izuku whacked him with his guitar. Then trapped him inside his closet. Dad would never believe him. Well, unless he shows him the stranger. "Dad." "Yes, Izuku." "Do you have any friends?" Dad paused. "I do." Izuku pursed his lips. "Would you ever invite them over?" Dad chuckled. "I don't think so. I have you, And that's all I need. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 blushed. Thanks. Dad turned on a burner and pulled a pot of water on top, before sitting beside 𝐒𝐬𝐽. Do you want a drink? No thanks. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 shook his head, covering his face with his arms. Perhaps the stranger isn't Dad's friend. Maybe he's lying about inviting people. No. Dad never lies, at least, not about that. That would mean the stranger is not his friend. Shoot. What are you murmuring about? Dad questioned, resting a hand on his chin. Oh. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 shot up, looking at his dad. Were you busy today? Dad tilted his head. Not really. Though, I was busy enough not to be home. Oh, okay. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 nodded, twiddling his thumbs. He asked that to figure out why Dad didn't stop the stranger. Dad said he wouldn't invite any of his friends to his home, so that cancels out the possibility of the stranger being his friend. How the stranger got to his house was the question. If his dad was busy, that answered why he didn't stop the stranger. He can't do his job plus protect the house at the same time. If he could, he can't do it if he's extremely busy. However, Dad saying he wasn't busy only made more questions. Why do you ask? Can I tell you after dinner? I'm still trying to wrap my thoughts around. Perhaps, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 can stretch the truth. He won't tell Dad the whole truth, but an altered truth. He knows he should tell the truth, but he really can't. He would get in so much trouble for touching a stranger and letting him inside. He's already screwed for touching the mystery item on top of it all. If that will make the situation better for you, sure. Thanks. Am I going to get in trouble? Dad didn't say anything for a few moments. It depends on what happened. Oh, but remember, I'm not mad. No matter what you say, I won't get mad. We'll get through this together. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 almost said, that doesn't mean I won't get in trouble. Soon after that, Dad continued to cook dinner and 𝐒𝐬𝐽 went to the music room. In the room, he played a few songs on the piano and guitar. He used the time to think of a plan. A believable story. Once he was called for dinner, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 ran over his thoughts about the plan and nodded. He felt confident. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 sat down beside Dad at the island. A delicious plate of pasta and meatballs was gone in only a few minutes. His dad was right, he was hungry. Are you ready to talk about what happened? 𝐒𝐬𝐽 stiffly nodded, now or never. Dad smiled after he swallowed his last bite. Tell me from the beginning. What happened? 𝐒𝐬𝐽 took a deep breath in. When you left I was upset. I don't like you leaving, so I hung out in my room by my window and watched nature. I was hoping I could get a head start in knowing you were coming home. My hair ended up getting dirty cause I allowed it to fall. I kinda wanted to touch the dirt. Looking at Dad, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 waited for a response or a reaction. But 𝐒𝐬𝐽 didn't get any of those. Dad stared at his hands that were on top of the island. He didn't have much emotion, the only thing that could be seen was blankness. Continuing at an awkward moment of silence, while playing with some dirt, I heard a sound. I tried to find where it came from but I couldn't see anything. Only a few minutes later I noticed it came from the forest. I thought it was an animal or something at first, so I didn't really care. In fact, I got curious and I looked around for it. Thinking about the stranger and the fear he caused, he channeled all the stress. Everything. CC came to a SS stop WNIIS or a SS stranger. What? Dad questioned fiercely. MIIS or a stranger. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 whispered. Technically, it's true. He saw a stranger and did some stuff with him. In his altered story, he saw the stranger from afar. This will explain why he might start to ask questions to his dad about strangers and why he's so scared. It's the same story, but with details missing. Dad. In the most sincere voice he could muster, Dad said, 𝐒𝐬𝐽. I'm so sorry. No. Don't be. I should be sorry. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 blurted out, waving his hands around. He probably shouldn't be apologizing for something his dad caused. However, he found himself instinctively apologizing. No, you shouldn't. It's my fault. Dad shifted his view onto 𝐒𝐬𝐽. Over here, I want a hug. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 nodded, tears instinctively falling down. He twisted himself so that he was hugging him, but still remained on the chair. I'm so sorry, 𝐒𝐽𝐽. This shouldn't have happened. It's okay. Really? I'm fine. The stranger didn't do anything. He just walked. Did he see you? Dad interrupted, hugging him tighter. I am not sure. Once I saw him, I hid. Izuku whimpered, burying his face into his chest. Dad nodded. Do you remember what he looks like? Izuku stilled. I remember he had purple hair and was around my age. I think. A few moments before thank you for telling me. Why you're welcome. Izuku scratched his cheek as he felt awkward. A part of him felt guilty because didn't tell Dad what happened. The actual truth. No matter how much the voice said it, Izuku refused. How did you get the item you found? Izuku gulped, thinking back about his plan. He drew a blank. He didn't think this part through. Searching his mind for an answer, he got a few ideas, but he worried that they wouldn't make sense with the story he told. He could tell his dad he found it in the house, but that would mean the stranger came in, which doesn't make sense. Another idea was, he could say he picked it up with his hair from the outside. Though, that sounded like a stretch. Izuku, how did you get it? Dad asked once again, patience growing thinner. I found it outside. After he said it, he knew he was screwed. Excuse me. After I hid, I'll looked back outside to see if the stranger was still there. And he wasn't. I saw this glass like thing and I used my hair to pick it up. You used your hair? Dad repeated in a tone almost like he knew he was lying. To lift it up. Why yes? God. Stop being so suspicious. How did you do that? I am not as sure. I kinda forgot. You forgot? Dad asked, in a deadpan voice. Yes. It was very traumatic. Dad sighed, true. Izuku knew he was hesitant, he knew how terrible his lie was. Why Dad wasn't getting mad at him about it, surprised him to no end. Nevertheless, please don't do something like that again. And I mean it. I don't want you to be touching random objects you find on the ground. Shaking his head, he drew back from the hug. Of course. I would never dream of it. Izuku smiled, clapping his hands. Dad swung his legs over the chair and walked over to the kitchen. Izuku twiddled with his thumbs, waiting for Dad to say something else. Dad. Do you believe me? What happened and how there was a stranger? Do you believe me? I do, Izuku. Breathing out a sigh of relief, he smiled. Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to tell me? Yes. Oh. And what is that? I may have dented my guitar. That's why I was late. Does that make sense? Izuku whispered the last bit while he felt sweat fall down his forehead. How did you dent it? Dad asked, closing up a cupboard. Can I just show you? It might be easier to explain. I was actually going to ask you that myself. I'll be right back. Izuku hopped off the stool and rushed into the hall. He faintly heard his dad say to be quick about it. Trying to be as quick as he could, he ran into his room, grabbed the guitar, checked if the stranger was still sleeping he was and ran back out. Breathing, he moved the guitar on top of the island. Here it is. Oh Izuku, it's your favorite guitar. I'm so sorry that happened. Dad comforted, using a hand to touch the wooden instrument. How did you dent it? Looking at it now, it looked terrible. It had a few cracks at where it made contact with the stranger and a few strings were mangled. A once chocolatey brown guitar had a few black streaks running through it. Did he accidentally scratch it? In a whisper, he muttered, It doesn't really look like I dented it. I would have to agree with you, Izuku. Dad spoke out, startling Izuku. You heard that? Izuku blurted out, fear rising. I did. Can you please tell me how it got destroyed? Dad asked as he expected the cracks and dents. Izuku scrambled through his mind, plotting a lie. After the stranger, I tried to calm myself by playing some music on, he waved a hand at the guitar. My guitar and I ended up tripping. Izuku glanced up at Dad, looking for an indication of Dad imputing. Seeing that Dad was just looking at the guitar, Izuku continued. The guitar smashed into the ground and I got scared of the noise. As a result of that, I ran into my room and hid it in my closet. Why did you do that? Dad asked, strumming a few strings that were still facing into the wood. 𝐒𝐿 tapped the counter with his fingertips, looking around the room, searching for an idea. 𝐒𝐿. Oh, yes. 𝐒𝐿 jerked his head back to Dad and winced. Did I get distracted? You did. Please, continue. Dad said as he adjusted a string. 𝐒𝐿 felt hurt seeing his dad ask questions while he didn't take notice of him. His head remained down, looking at the guitar like he knew what really happened. It unnerved him that his dad could tell when he got distracted or was trying to change the subject even when he wasn't looking at him. What was I talking about? This time, Dad looked up at him with stern eyes. Why did you hide the guitar? Oh. Right, that. Well, I was ashamed that I broke the instrument. Why did you feel that way? 𝐒𝐿 shrugged. I was scared you would get mad, I guess. Are you mad? Dad hummed. Perhaps, however, I'm not mad at you. I'm frustrated that a stranger got past my security and made you distressed. No one should have gone past it. And I am sorry. Oh, thanks. I'm sorry too. That's why I'm not mad at you for breaking the guitar. I don't blame you for breaking it. You were scared and did what anyone would do in that situation. I suppose you said it was dented because you were scared to assess the damage, right? 𝐒𝐿 nodded, very much so. Do you believe me? That I'm not mad at you? Dad gently stared at 𝐒𝐿 with warm eyes. Yes. Sorta. Are you going to punish me? Dad understood him, immediately. If I'm mad, you think I'll punish you? 𝐒𝐿 stared, mouth gaping. How did you know that? How did you know I was feeling that way? Dad laughed, a loud laugh. You're amazing, you know that. Dad. Don't change the subject. 𝐒𝐿 whined, crossing his arms. Dad's laugh faltered to a chuckle. I guess I'm wise and understand you rather well. 𝐒𝐿 smiled, giggling at the thought. About punishments. I won't be giving you one. 𝐒𝐿 sighed happily, that's a relief. However, there will be more rules in place. Why? 𝐒𝐿 asked, anxiety bubbling up. Dad narrowed his eyes for a second before talking. I don't want something like this ever happening again. But I thought you trust me. 𝐒𝐿 quizzed anxiously. Why would he need more rules when the stranger didn't even come into the house? Did Dad realize what he said was a lie? Perhaps it's for his room's ledge I do. Then why are you making more rules? To assure your safety. Oh. Dad hummed, put the guitar away. 𝐒� nodded, grabbing the guitar from the island and heading towards the hall. Dad. Yes. 𝐒� looked over to Dad and saw him putting away dishes and other items into cabinets. Is it possible you could get a new one? A new guitar? Why yeah. I can do that, Dad answered, turning the sink on and lifting a dish to scrub off the excess dirt. 𝐒� smiled at his dad before running to the music room to drop the guitar off. He knows it's broken and he can never play on it again, however, it was his most used instrument. It feels odd throwing it away in the trash. Coming back into the kitchen, after one look in his room he stood idly near the island, waiting for his dad to finish the chore. I'm back. 𝐒� whispered. He tried to make it obvious that he was there so that he wouldn't scare his dad like last time. Now 𝐒�, Dad said as he cleaned the last pot and placed it on top of the dish rack. I want you to know that I will be heightening the security of the cottage. I'll make it my top priority. Oh, thanks Dad. I might even install some cameras, Dad muttered in a low voice. Too quiet for 𝐒� to hear. What did you say, Dad? I couldn't hear you. Oh. It's nothing, I was just thinking about a few things. Smiling at 𝐒�, he patted him on the head when he got over to him. Dad. Your hands are wet. 𝐒� giggled, leaning away from it. Oh. You don't like it? No. 𝐒� giggled, running away from the island and into the living room. No you don't. Dad jerked himself and before 𝐒� could make any ground, he grabbed him from the armpits. You're going to stay wet. No. 𝐒𝐬𝐿 playfully whined. Dad tickled his skin, making 𝐒𝐬𝐿 explode with giggles. The water made it all the more squeamish. 𝐒𝐬𝐿 struggled to get out of his grasp, resorting to light kicks. After one kick at Dad's groin, 𝐒𝐬𝐿 fell to the ground in a fit of laughter. 𝐒𝐬𝐿, why did you have to do that? Dad complained, taking a knee. 𝐒𝐬𝐿 giggled once more and hugged his dad around the neck. I'm wet now because of you. Are you now? Yes. Have you given some thought that that's what I wanted from the beginning? 𝐒𝐬𝐿 frowned. No. Dad laughed loudly. You're so funny, 𝐒𝐬𝐿. Hey. I am. 𝐒𝐬𝐿 laughed at that, not believing it for a second. You are? Dad confirmed. Standing up slowly, he guided a hand from 𝐒𝐿's curls. You should go to bed. What? It's early. 𝐒𝐿 complained, throwing his head back. You've had a stressful day. Sleep can help you. Think about what actually happened, Dad explained, resting his hands on 𝐒𝐿's shoulders. Understand. 𝐒𝐿 looked back and gave a small nod. I do. Before you leave. What's going to happen with the item I found? Dad took a second to understand what he meant before making a sound. Dad reached behind him to pull the item out of his pocket. You mean this? Yeah. I'll be keeping it. Oh, okay. Honestly, 𝐒𝐿 wanted it to be used as leverage against the stranger, but if his dad wants it, his dad will get it. Where will you be? Dad used a hand to point towards the foyer. The basement. I have some work to do. Oh. Okay. I guess this is good night. Dad nodded as he stood up. It is. I love you, 𝐒𝐿. Good night. He leaned down to give a small kiss on 𝐒𝐿's forehead, then stood up and headed towards the foyer. 𝐒𝐿 watched Dad walk towards the door before heading to the bathroom. He got himself ready for bed, changing into PJs, brushing his hair, brushing his teeth, you name it. The only difference compared to other nights was he did it slowly. He knew if he were to rush, he would be sleeping with a stranger in his room. In his closet. He still hasn't come up with an idea on how to get rid of the stranger. Perhaps he could push him out the window. 𝐒𝐿 groaned, walking inside his room. He flopped onto his bed and got under the covers. Not bothering to turn off the lights, he curled up into a tight ball and closed his eyes tightly. He felt a bit of relaxation when he heard the stranger snore. The stranger is asleep. He can sleep too. Thinking of non-existent scenarios, 𝐒𝐿 fell asleep. Late into the night, 𝐒𝐿 was woken up abruptly by his dad. 𝐒𝐿 shot up, thinking it was the stranger trying to steal his hair. Clenching the long strands close to his chest, 𝐒𝐿 took a moment to look behind his dad to the closet door. He sighed in relaxation. The door was closed. Dad followed his gaze to the door, then back to him. 𝐒𝐿 forced himself to laugh, attempting to fill the awkwardness. Dad sat down beside 𝐒𝐿's legs, smiling. The darkness gave him a weary feeling. The shining hallway lamp cast a shadow onto his face. It made his eyes and nose the only visible features. 𝐒� bunched his legs close to his chest, shielding his vulnerability from the man in front. If he made the tiniest wrong move, his dad could figure out there was a stranger in the room with them. Might it be a misuse of words or an odd sound from the closet? His dad will know. 𝐒�, Dad said, weaving his soft hand, which originally had callus, through 𝐒�'s green locks. 𝐒� nodded, moving his hand to cover his dad's, hoping to distract him from the quietness in the room. I know you will hate me saying this, but I have to leave. What? 𝐒� blurted out, taking in words he didn't believe. I'm really sorry, son. Dad pressed a hand on top of 𝐒�'s knee, which was still covered with blankets. It's an emergency with work, I can't miss it. Oh, okay, I understand, 𝐒� mumbled, hugging his legs. As much as he wanted his dad to leave him alone so he could figure out what to do with the stranger, he didn't want him to go. How long? Dad hummed in thought for a few moments. I believe a day from now. Meaning, I'll be back next morning. Really? 𝐒� grinned. That's not long at all. Dad smiled with a small chuckle. It really isn't. It's only, 𝐒� glanced at the digital clock on his bedside table, 2 a.m. now. Indeed it is. Well, I should let you go back to bed, but before I do, I have a few rules I want to talk to you with. Izuku bit his lip to conceal the murmurs of his apprehension. It's not a lot, but it's very important you follow them to the word. Understand me? I do. Good, the rule is you cannot leave your room while I am away. Izuku's eyes widened. Here. Wait, really? You're serious? Dad stared, eyes unblinking. Izuku scratched his hand because of his anxiety building up inside his gut. This has never happened before. Izuku mumbled. Correct, it hasn't, Dad frowned, casting a glance behind him. Izuku followed his eyes to only find him looking at the closet door. Fear quickly replaced his gut feeling of pure nerves with a sickening sense of dread. Dad! Izuku yelped, jumped up from his position on the bed and fell into the arms of his dad. His dad took a split second to fix his arms so that Izuku wouldn't just fall off the bed. Whoa! Dad began, wrapping his limbs securely around Izuku's back. Why did you do that? Dad said gently. I don't know. I guess I'll miss you. Izuku managed to express, inwardly cringing at himself. Or Aizu. I'll miss you so much, Dad exclaimed, squeezing Izuku's body tightly. Izuku forced himself to laugh, hoping he distracted his dad from analyzing the closet. I just want to give you one more hug before you go to your job, Izuku explained, closing his eyes for 1 second and shifting his head so that it was on his dad's chest. I'm flattered, Dad smiled. Izuku took his time relishing the moment before he pulled away from Dad. Moments like these were so sincere it almost made Izuku cry. Just the two of them embracing each other as if they are the only thing in the world. It held so much love and consideration. Hugs like these never happened, but if they did it was somehow strained or they tried to comfort the other. At this moment, they both held the same feeling. Love and sadness. I'm really going to miss you, Dad, Izuku whispered as he wiped a tear from his right eye. Truly. I won't be gone for long, it'll be a little more than a day. Honest? Izuku asked. He truly hated how Dad left all the time to do work. It felt like his dad never had time to be with him. Though his dad needed to go and he can't do anything about it. That's the sad truth. Honest, Dad answered back, comforting Izuku all the more. Izuku relaxed into the hug before pulling away. Guess you got to go, he murmured. Guess I do. Dad gently pushed Izuku down on the bed so that he was lying. He tucked Izuku in, causing the boy to giggle at his dad's playful expression. As soon as that ordeal occurred, Dad lowered his head so that he could give Izuku a little peck on the forehead. Love you, Izuku. Never forget it. I won't. Izuku shook his head quickly. How could he forget that? Dad stood up and pressed a hand on top of Izuku's chest, weaving a hand under the wildness of what is Izuku's hair. He rolled his eyes at the move. It will still be here when you get back, Izuku laughed, tucking his hair under the cover. Dad's hand stilled. Oh, right. You're right. It'll be here. Izuku frowned. Will his hair still be here? Trying to conceal said frown, Izuku turned his head away from his dad and buried it inside the covers. Dad took the notion as a fit of sadness, Izuku thought as he heard his sigh. If you want, Dad said, I could get you a new guitar. Wait, really? Izuku's eyes widened. Looking over at him in surprise, I would love that. Dad smiled, the darkness making it ever so creepy. Great. I was just thinking you would like it. I do. Well, I better be off, Dad replied, walking over to the door in long strides. Remember, his dad turned to look at Izuku one last time before exiting the threshold, don't leave his room. But what if I get bored? Or hungry? Or need to go to the washroom? Dad paused, I guess you'll have to wait until I get back. What? If you leave, I'll know. Got it? As if his whole demeanor flipped, Dad was not the regular old person Izuku knew. He was using his work voice. The voice he only heard when he was in the basement. Izuku gulped, twiddling his fingers. His heart dropped to the ground as he watched his dad turn away from him and close the door. Darkness enveloped him. Bye, Izuku croaked. Staring up at the ceiling above him, he allowed tears to drip from his eyes, soaking the pillow below him. Izuku knew his dad had a mysterious side he wished to not tell him. That made sense, of course, you can't give all your secrets away. However, Dad leaving to do work in the middle of the night never happened before. Or at least Dad never came into the room and told him he would be gone. A couple of months ago, an instance like this occurred. Izuku woke up to a silent house with no note. Those were the moments he didn't want to think about. The moments that showed their father and son relationship was terrible. Although, Izuku can't do anything about it. He can't change his dad, and his dad has full control over his life. If his dad wants to make a stupid rule that will hurt Izuku and leave the house for more than 24 hours, so be it. Izuku can't change it. He has to follow the rules. Bang! What the F? Izuku shot off from the bed, heart pounding as sweat formed on his forehead. Breathing in shallow gasps, he closed his eyes to calm himself down. A crash came from the front of the room, accompanied by a yell and groan. Izuku jumped off the bed, darting to the closet. Running on pure adrenaline, Izuku crashed into the closet door and pressed his weight onto it. As he did this, he tucked his hands tightly around the door handle, holding it close. "Hey!" The stranger snapped, pushing onto the closet door. Izuku held his ground, pushing in the opposite direction. He gritted his teeth, clenching his hands together around the handle. At that moment, Izuku knew he was screwed. No way is he going to be able to hold the stranger down for any longer than a minute. With his weak noodle arms, he knew at any second the stranger would break the door down and he would be hurt. Izuku's hair is going to be taken away by the stranger. Clenching his face in one tight motion, Izuku spread his legs out and pivoted his weight so that he could have a better hold. No way is going to let that happen. "Ah!" Izuku yelled out in rage, slamming his body into the door. "Stop it! Who are, what? What's going on? Where am I?" The stranger blurted out questions, causing Izuku to feel his head spin in dizziness. Everything came to a crashing stop, that point being the realization of what the stranger sounded like. A deep masculine, but young voice was the stranger's. Izuku was naive to think this, but it was the only thing that made the whole stranger being in your closet situation better. In his original plan, he would take the stranger out of the closet who would be unconscious and push the stranger out of the window and forget that it ever happened. Sure, the stranger would be hurt, but it would be okay. Izuku would hang his hair down so that it touches the stranger's body and heal him from afar. The plan was foolproof. Izuku took in the variables of Dad knowing if he left the room or not and projected it into the plan. But now, how would it work? If he pushed the stranger out of the window while he was awake, he could run to the front door and break in and mess things up. Well, he'd probably won't. Izuku kidnapped him and locked him in his closet. Why would he want to come back in? The only thing that made Izuku waver in that was the fact that the stranger tried to break in the first place. Would he be stupid enough to do that? Can you go back to sleep, please?" Izuku asked in a whisper that was heard by the stranger. He guessed. "No. Please," Izuku whined, tapping the door handle due to his nerves. "I won't." Izuku frowned sadly. "Now what?" "Where am I?" the stranger asked. He clenched his fist together and punched the closet door. Izuku yelped at the noise and movement. His guard went down for just a second while he asked the stranger to go back to sleep, but now it's back up. "My closet. Why am I in your closet? You broke into my house, and now you are my prisoner," Izuku explained, inwardly cheering on himself for the good description. A small smile spread across his lips and he lightly moved his fist into the air, then he quickly latched it back onto the door handle. "I did." "You did?" Izuku exclaimed. "You unlocked the front door." Wait a second, this is a misunderstanding. I was just exploring, I thought the house was abandoned." "Wow, that's nice to hear." Izuku rolled his eyes. "Don't have to be rude or lie." "Well, you're the one who locked me in a closet, so of course I'll be rude." Izuku's face twisted, and the comment went straight to his heart. He leaned back on the closet door and faced the room. If the stranger was going to be rude, Izuku wouldn't talk to him. "Let's just put this behind us and you let me go." Simple as that. What Izuku really wanted to say was it's not that simple. If he lets him go, the stranger will steal his hair and Izuku can't have that. "Are you there?" the stranger asked, after a few awkward moments of silence. Izuku shook his head, quietly giggling that the stranger could not know he was still there. I can tell you're still there. Heh. You're not that quiet. 𝐒𝐿 fell to the ground, back against the door. He curled his legs to his chest. Please stay for a little longer, he whispered. Someone will come find me. My family will start to worry and then they will call the heroes and the heroes will arrest you. What? Izuku's fear rose once again. You hear me, you will go to jail unless you let me leave. I can't. Can't what? I can't let you go, Izuku whispered, tucking his head on top of his knees. I'm scared of you. Really? The stranger asked in genuine shock. It made Izuku almost forget the stakes that were present. Yes, really, Izuku mumbled, you're going to try to steal my hair away from me. What? Yes. Don't act like you don't know. Izuku snapped. I'm sorry, okay? I really didn't know. Stealing someone's hair isn't exactly normal. It's not. No. Are you going to? Why on earth would I don't know, Izuku whispered. Dad said everyone wanted to. The stranger stayed quiet after his comment, which made Izuku do the same. Was it really not that normal? You still there? Yes. Blushing brightly at that, Izuku quickly scrambled to replace the awkward silence. Why did you come into my house? I don't know. The stranger said. What were you doing in the middle of the forest? Izuku asked, tilting his head so that his ear was gliding against his knee. Walking, exploring. Izuku snorted, really? The stranger has to be lying. There's not much out here. Except you. Oh yeah, you're right. Why are you out here? The stranger changed his tone just a tad as if he was imitating Izuku's voice, in the middle of the forest. I live here with my dad. Izuku should have stayed silent about his dad, but to be honest, he was upset with him. Why give him the satisfaction of listening to his rules about talking to strangers when he made a stupid crazy rule himself? Your dad? Yeah. How old are you? I'm not sure. I think I'm 15. Izuku had to pause. Was he 15? Time went by in blurs for him. His memory was terrible in remembering how long he did something. Perhaps he should ask his dad after he's done being mad at him. I'm 15 too. You are? Izuku stuttered out of shock. The stranger is his age. His age. He didn't look to be 15, more like in his 20s. Though, he doesn't know what someone looks like at that age, so how could he tell? Nonetheless, the stranger looks to be older. I am. Gosh, Izuku laughed, rubbing his face in his hands. I don't believe it. You know, I could have used my quirk on you. Let me go and I will not use it. The stranger really wanted to leave. It hurt Izuku that the stranger wanted to go, even when they were having a nice conversation. Wait, no. The stranger isn't nice. Snap out of it, Izuku. Quirk. Izuku asked the first question that occurred to him. What does that mean? My ability. What's your name? The stranger's questions frazzled Izuku's mind. How could he say one thing and then say something else? He keeps on switching through different topics and it confuses him. And it made the situation all the more crazy. He felt the urge to curl in a ball and cry his tears out and wait for his dad to come back and hold him tight. He can manage, surely. He just needs the stranger to be quiet. I'm not telling you. You tell me. Gosh, the stranger's voice faltered into a whisper. Izuku panicked at that and pressed his ear to the door, trying to hear what he said. Something to do with his quirk and feeling bad, then he started whispering about if the person who kidnapped him was lying. Hey! I didn't kidnap you. God, did your mom tell you to not eavesdrop? A sigh. Ignore me, I just want answers. Why am I here? You won't use that ability you said you have. Izuku pulled away from the door, trying to get away from it as well as be close. I won't. What is it? You answer me first. The stranger said in a stern voice, startling Izuku. He knew for a fact that the situation should be the opposite. Izuku should be the DMNT person while the stranger should be the SBMSSV. He should be telling the stranger what to do. He's in his closet for crying out loud. I can't let my dad see you." Even with the inner talk Izuku just had, he couldn't find himself to boss the stranger around. "Why's that?" "My dad is very strict on rules, and one of the rules is not talking or interacting with strangers, and I broke it after I used my guitar to knock you out," Izuku said slowly. The stranger didn't say anything for a few seconds, and Izuku took the hint to continue. "I'm not allowed to leave the house. In fact, I've never left. I'm not really sure what the outside is like." Izuku heard the stranger's small gasp, which made him panic. "And even if I wanted to leave, I couldn't. My dad would punish me." Izuku began to falter but finished the explanation. "You can't leave?" Izuku nodded, which turned into a yes after he remembered the stranger couldn't see his face yet. "Thank God. That's not normal, you should be able to." "It's normal for me." Izuku frowned. If the stranger was going to be rude, he would just not talk to him. Izuku made a "ghee" sound and stood up, shaking his hair. Taking a few steps forward, he smiled at the stranger's calls for him to come back. Taking a seat on the edge of his bed, Izuku pulled out a brush from the bedside table and brought a clump of hair to his lap. Brushing the strands out, he felt satisfied at the stranger's calls for him to come back. "Hey! Come back! I'm lonely in here." The stranger chuckled at the end. "I need you." This resulted in a full belly laugh. Izuku gaped in disgust. Feeling completely insulted, he ceased his brushing. Did the stranger think he was incompetent? Is that why he's making fun of him and talking in a condescending voice? He won't have it. Izuku shot up from the bed and took a step forward to take control of the situation. He won't be teased. Only his dad could do it, and even that scared. He has a higher power over the stranger and should be the one asking the questions and getting results. It's not fair. Taking another step forward, Izuku opened his mouth ready to yell. As soon as he got only a couple of footsteps away from the door, he heard the closet door creak. Izuku's eyes widened and scared in a gasp. A pale hand crept around the door, pushing it forward with only his fingers. With only one thing left in his body, Izuku pivoted his foot and boosted himself towards the bedroom door. "Ah!" Izuku yelped, running out of the room, not looking back. With nothing in his mind, Izuku threw himself behind the kitchen island once he got in the room. Jumping up into a crouching position, Izuku popped his head over the counter. He studied the hall to the bedroom, but from his view, he couldn't see his bedroom door. He would have to expose himself to the elements to see the door. Cowering behind the island, he watched the hall, ready to run to somewhere he hadn't figured out yet to safety. He tried to calm himself down by breathing slowly and deeply, hoping if he were to calm down, he would quiet down. Tucking his hands on the island counter, he hung his head low, taking in deep breaths. He watched his legs quiver and twitch at the strain of his position. It was only a matter of time until his legs failed on him. Looking back up, he gasped. The purple-headed stranger stood at the end threshold of the hallway, looking around with a bored face. Izuku yelped, letting go of the counter and falling into a ball. Izuku heard the floorboards creak depending on where the stranger took steps. The creaks became louder, so much so that Izuku felt tears stream from his eyes. This is it. In only a matter of a few seconds, he felt a shadow cover his body in darkness. He whimpered, "Please no, please go away, please." "I won't hurt you," the stranger said in a calm, peaceful voice. Izuku pulled his head away from his arms and carefully looked up at the stranger. "Why you won't?" The purple-haired stranger shook his head, and the purple strands flopped back and forth, giving him a mystical feel. Taking in the stranger's face, Izuku felt his jaw fall. The stranger had no blemishes on his face, except for a few pink marks near the top of his forehead. A pinkish tone dusted his cheeks, along with upturned lips. "Yeah, I won't." "How can I tell?" The stranger moved his hand forward. "My name is Hitoshi Shinso, what's your name?" Izuku steadily placed his hand on top of the stranger's. No Hitoshi's hand and clasped his fingers around it. Hitoshi pulled Izuku up with a small amount of force and brought him to his feet. "Whoa," Izuku gulped. "I'm Izuku." Hitoshi smiled. "You okay?" "Yes. I'm okay." Izuku blurted out, retching his hand away from the stranger. Thanks. I didn't expect you to have a long hair, Hitoshi said with a pause as if he didn't believe what he was seeing. Izuku smiled. You're the first person to see it other than my dad. I am a hair. Izuku looked away. Why didn't you leave the house? The door's right there. Izuku pointed towards the front entrance. Hitoshi followed Izuku's finger to the door. I don't know. You can leave. If you want to, Izuku murmured, twiddling with his fingers. Truly, he didn't want Hitoshi to leave. At first, he wanted the stranger to leave as he caused issues and conflict with his dad. But after taking a good look at Hitoshi, he felt his heart throb. He didn't want him to leave yet. As much as he wants that, he can't hold Hitoshi back. Perhaps the closet was the one thing that stopped Izuku from letting Hitoshi go. Izuku was shaken out of his trance by the one and only Hitoshi, his hands on his shoulders. Calm down, I'm not leaving. But as much as I hate to admit this, but I kidnapped you. You should leave before you get hurt. The unspoken words that Izuku really wanted to say were due to his dad. If Hitoshi stays, his dad will hurt him. You're going to hurt me. And no, Izuku disagreed, I'm too scared to. Which was a lie. If he needed to, he would whack Hitoshi with his guitar if it came down to it. My dad will, he whispered. Hitoshi hummed, taking a look around the room. Izuku followed his gaze, curious about what he was thinking and planning to do. You know, Izuku started, you're the first person I met who's the same age as me. In fact, you're the only person I've met who isn't my dad. Wait, really? Hitoshi glanced behind his shoulder, mouth gaped. Yep. Izuku said with a pop, it's nice seeing someone new. And that isn't trying to steal my hair. People have tried to take your hair. Izuku shook his head with a tiny smile. For some odd reason, he liked the facial expression Hitoshi had. It was as if he didn't believe him, but he knew he did. He was just shocked. No, my dad just warns me that everyone wants to take it. That's why I'm not allowed out of the house. Someone could steal my hair. Why would someone want your hair? Izuku started, let's not talk about it. The fear of Hitoshi learning about the power of his hair could cause him to try to steal it terrified him. Could it be possible that Hitoshi had no idea about the power? Hitoshi eyed him before turning away. Do you mind that I look around? Only if you don't break anything. My dad isn't here and I don't want him to come back and see a mess. Izuku expressed it with a hand movement. Hitoshi nodded, will do. He turned away and began to inspect the room. Izuku was hot on his tail, watching where he looked. Hitoshi left the kitchen after he got bored and went to the living room. Why is there no TV? Here. Izuku titled his head, glancing at where Hitoshi was looking. Hitoshi was looking at the mantel in front of the couch. What's a TV? Hitoshi jerked his head, boring his eyes into Izuku's face. You don't know what a TV is? No. Izuku questioned. Hitoshi's eyes twitched. How do you not know? I guess my dad has never got one. What the dash, look over there. Izuku interrupted, sensing the awkwardness. You should check out the foyer. Okay, Hitoshi shrugged, but don't think this is over. Right. Izuku waved Hitoshi over to the main entrance of the house. This is where my dad's shoes are and his coats. He crouched down to show Hitoshi the black and brown dress shoes. My dad likes to dress formally. Where's your shoes? Remember, I can't leave the house. There's no point in having shoes if I won't even use them, Izuku explained, drawing his index finger along the laces. Same goes for the coats. Izuku pointed towards the closet. Standing back up, Izuku opens the closet door and reaches a hand towards the suit coats. They're nice, aren't they? Yeah, Hitoshi agreed. Where is he? He's at work, he had to leave last night for an emergency. Izuku said sorrowfully. He sighed for a second before closing the closet back up. I love him a lot. I can tell, Hitoshi said. What's the door for? He asked, bringing Izuku's attention away from the closet and onto the basement door. It leads to the basement. Hitoshi hummed, lugging his hand to the doorknob. Let's check it out. No. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 yelled, leaping in front of the door. You can't. He spread his arms and legs, trying to hide the door away from Hitoshi. Why can't I? You said I could explore, Hitoshi protested, crossing his arms. I know. But you can't go in, it's off limits. Even for me. Why's that? It's where my dad works, my dad doesn't want me going down there. Izuku explained. He's not here. Sure, but that doesn't have anything to do with it, Izuku expressed, tilting his head slightly. Hitoshi's eyes narrowed. One peek. No. Izuku yelled, I'll kick you out if you keep on asking. Fine. Izuku narrowed his eyes in distrust. Good, you're new around here so you don't know how things work. Sure, Hitoshi shrugged, taking his sights off the door and observing the rest of the house. I don't. What difference does it make? I just. Izuku snapped, I don't want you messing anything up. Geez, fine, I'll listen. Hitoshi faced Izuku, who just now tucked his limbs away from the door. Izuku nodded. My dad is quite strict and doesn't like me doing a lot of things without his permission. So, many things that might be normal for you aren't normal for me. Like leaving the house or going downstairs. My dad does all of this to protect me. Hitoshi gawked for what felt like a solid minute. Izuku held his ground, chin pointed up a tad to show who was the DMNT one. Doesn't it SCK? Being stuck in here. Izuku was about to protest. No. Ah yes. Gosh, it SCKs. I want to go outside to see the world, like the forest. I would like to see where you came from and why you are here. My dad told me that everyone wants to steal my hair and that's why he locked me away. But you are different. You don't want to steal my hair and you for some reason don't want to leave, it just disproves everything my dad said. Izuku didn't know he had these thoughts within him. Sure, the thought of leaving the house would be great. He could see everything for the first time, but he knew that was impossible. His dad would never let him leave. And Izuku doesn't really want to leave. If he does, his dad would miss him and there's the possibility of his dad needing to use his powers. But on the flip side, the thought of leaving sounds amazing. Izuku would get to see the world outside the cottage and explore it. If you had the choice, would you like to leave? Izuku took a second to think. I'm really not sure, the thought of leaving sounds great, but I don't know. I could help you, leave. Hitoshi said, with assurance. Why would you want to do that? Hitoshi bit his lip, he took a second to look around. Izuku followed his eyes to where he was looking. He found that Hitoshi was darting his eyes around the room, almost like he was trying to find something. Izuku opened his mouth to speak, here. Hitoshi interrupted, but as soon as he saw Izuku's pout, he apologized. Sorry, I just got excited. Never mind that, look. Hitoshi moved his hand towards a shoe. Do you know where these come from? Shoes. Yeah. Are my dad? Your dad made them. No. He just brought them home one day. Exactly. He got them from somewhere else. He bought it from a store. In fact, everything in this house originated from a store. Wait, really? Izuku's eyes glimmered. You're telling me my instruments were from a store? Hitoshi nodded with a smirk. Indeed. Wow. What else is in the outside world? Remember the TV I mentioned? You can see one for yourself if you leave the house. Really? Yeah, what else? Have you heard of phones? Izuku shook his head. No. Hitoshi began to make a list of things that Izuku found unusual. The words themselves, as well as the nature of the situation. He'd never heard of any of the things Hitoshi said, which piqued his interest. What else is there? I want to see the world. What? Hitoshi paused mid-sentence. And I want you to help me see it. Hitoshi's eyes widened in disbelief. Really? Yes. You've caught my interest. Izuku smiled brightly. Oh wow, Hitoshi's cheeks reddened with heat. Looking away, he coughed. When do you want to go? I can go now, but I need to come back home before my dad comes back. How long would that be? I think 2 days. You think? My calculations might be off, but I think the next morning. I really hope you're right. Why's that? 'Cause if you're wrong and your dad gets here before you get home, you're screwed. Why do you care about that? Hitoshi's face turned beet red. Looking away, he whispered, I want to save you from him. Izuku's heart fluttered. The two conversed, and Hitoshi bragged about the house and family he had. Izuku thought it was for him to get jealous of the things he did not have, like good parents. Though, he was jealous. He just could not admit it. If he were to say it, it would mean all of his dad's efforts to protect and take care of him were for nothing as he wants more. Gosh, Hitoshi hurt his brain. Izuku and Hitoshi ended up moving to the couch, side by side. It was all good until Hitoshi began twirling his fingers through his curls. Do you know how long it is? Izuku shrugged, blushing a tad at Hitoshi's fingers. I don't know. All I know, it's very long and gets all over the place. That made Hitoshi chuckle. Just looking around, it covers where you've been. Perhaps that's how your dad knows when you do something quite wrong. Izuku never thought of that. Though, it made sense, his hair being a dead giveaway. Next time, I'll make sure to gather up all my hair before changing rooms. Yeah. Next time. Hitoshi trailed off, scratching at his hair. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Izuku didn't look convinced. Anyway, Hitoshi started, do you know what your quirk is? Izuku sighed with an eye roll. I told you already, I don't know what you're talking about. Hitoshi slapped his palm to his forehead, oh right. Izuku leaned a tad towards Hitoshi. You can tell me. The closer he got to Hitoshi's face, the redder it got. He frowned, is he sick? Dad's face can get like that when he's sick. Pulling back, Izuku leaned against the couch. Hitoshi looked flabbergasted, staring with a slack jaw. Izuku snorted, you okay? I'm good. Really good, wait no. That's not what I meant, just ignore me, Hitoshi mumbled, covering his red face. Izuku shrugged, all right. Hitoshi took a deep breath, you want me to tell you what quirks are? Izuku nodded. Quirks are just superpowers, wait do you know superpowers are? A nod. Okay, good. This will make this easier to explain. Anyway, everyone, well mostly everyone, has an ability that is a quirk that gives them powers. Like me, I can. Hitoshi faltered. Yeah. Izuku prompted. You tell me yours first. You must have a quirk. Hitoshi swayed the conversation like it was nothing. It hurt Izuku that he didn't want to tell him what his power was and keep it a secret. You promise me you'll tell me yours after I say mine. Sure. Hitoshi hung his head, I just don't want you to be scared of me. Izuku shook his head quickly. I would never. Well, if it has anything that could hurt me like BLD or punching or something, you shouldn't worry. Hitoshi stared before glancing away. Izuku took it as his moment to talk about his hair. Oh boy. My power is my hair. Your hair. Hitoshi drawled out. Don't act so surprised. There's a reason for why I was worried you were going to steal it. My hair has healing abilities where if I sing, it will glow and heal the person the hair is wrapped around. Like if you cut your hand, I can wrap my hair around it and sing a song, it will go away. Heh, that's interesting. Please don't get any ideas. I use my hair to heal my dad whenever he gets hurt, if you steal it, I won't be able to heal him. Gosh, I already said this, I won't steal it. Okay. It's not even possible to steal a quirk. It's not. No. Why would you even think that? It's nothing. I was just thinking. Izuku didn't want to think his dad was lying or Hitoshi was lying. One of them was lying. He didn't want to think about who was. Dad was either lying about how everyone can take your powers away and Hitoshi was either lying about people stealing it. Hitoshi's mouth pursed. If you say so. Do we need anything for the trip? Izuku asked, like usual, breaking the silence. No, this should be good. When he said that, Hitoshi meant him and Izuku was all that was needed. Well, perhaps one thing. Izuku tilted his head, what's that? My phone. Hitoshi twisted his hand, patting his breathes pockets. If I can find it. Did you take it? He got up from the couch and looked at where he was sitting and his back pockets. I can't find it. Perhaps it's in the closet. Stepping towards the exit, Izuku shot his hand forward. What are you talking about? Phone. Oh right, it's a rectangular thingy with glass. It can glow when a button is pressed. Ring any bells? Izuku's eyes popped open. It does. You won't find it in the closet. My dad took it. Hitoshi paled. He did. Heaving a breath, he stumbled back onto the couch, massaging his cheeks. Groaning, Hitoshi slammed his scalp against the cushion. Izuku choked on his saliva. Hitoshi. You okay? Alarmed, Hitoshi coughed into his hand. Yeah, I'm good. Izuku squinted his eyes unconvinced. It's just a rectangle, it can't be that, he faltered, remembering when he wanted to use the screen as leverage. Anyway, we have more important issues to focus on. Like, leaving this Shura house. Hitoshi hopped off the couch, shoving his hands into his pockets. Waving Izuku over to the foyer, he followed suit, hands on his hips. Hey! What were you about to say? Hitoshi shook his head. It was nothing. Grumbling and cursing to himself, Izuku paced with an annoyed face. Don't be mad at me, Izuku. Izuku looked flabbergasted. The audacity. You were talking about my house. It's not my fault that I don't know what the word you were going to say meant and thought it was negative. Hitoshi rolled his eyes. Come on. He grabbed the door handle and twisted it to the side, pushing the door open. Taking a step forward, Hitoshi cracked his knuckles and ventured onto the porch. Izuku hesitated, tapping his foot at the threshold. It was morning. The sun was rising brightly with the early birds chirping. A chill of wind made him shiver. You coming? Yeah, I just need time. This is very weird. Izuku laughed, patting the doorway. For starters, you should say goodbye to the house. Hitoshi waved to the building. Why would I do that? I'm only going to be gone for like a day or so. Hitoshi frowned, looking back to the forest. Come on. Wait. Is it going to be a problem that I don't have shoes? I'm only wearing socks, Izuku explained with an ounce of self-consciousness. Hitoshi shook his head. Nah, just be careful of where you step. Izuku nodded stiffly. Can things hurt him? Like what? Hitoshi stepped off onto the grass with a side glance. Izuku took his time to inch out of the house, poking his foot. Is it safe? It is. Izuku gulped, fear building up inside. He will be touching grass for the first time in his life. Wow, what will it feel like? Soft. Ridged. Izuku crept a foot above the grass, centimeters away. One twitch and he will be touching it. He will be leaving the house for the first time. Closing his eyes tightly, Izuku lowered it. Whoa. Soft, lush, tangled strands of grass tickled his foot. Izuku smiled brightly, bringing his second foot to the grass. Wow. So soft. Izuku tumbled to the ground and rolled in it, laughing brightly at the ticklish feelings. Hitoshi. Oh my gosh. This is amazing. He hopped off the grass. For the first time, I'm free. Hitoshi grinned with so much happiness. I'm glad. Wait. Izuku stood up. What else is out there? A path went down for miles it seemed. It was the same path Dad used all the time. However, there was the forest. He shot off into the woods, twirling around to look at all the life. Hitoshi was right on his trail, a smile present. He spun around. Look at this. This looks so pretty. Hitoshi followed as Izuku picked up rocks and twigs, inspecting them. Are Izuku? Yes. He asked, ceasing to take his eyes off a caterpillar scooting along a boulder. Your hair, it's still inside the house. I think we should go back and close the door. Izuku huffed, I guess. As they walked back only 10 meters, Izuku bundled up his hair so that it didn't get caught and watched the trees sway back and forth. Back at the house, Izuku dragged out his hair and closed the door and locked it with the help of Hitoshi. That's it. Yeah, let's go. Wait. He hesitated. I'm going to get in so much trouble. You won't. I might. Don't worry, we'll explore for only a day or so and I'll bring you back here before your dad gets here. It would be like you never left. But I did. Hitoshi laid hand on his shoulder. Live a little. It's not the end of the world you rebelled. In fact, I think it was a good thing. Taking a step away from your dad. I guess, Izuku nodded, rubbing his eyes. Let's go. Hitoshi led Izuku down the path, telling Izuku about all the things they could do. He brought him to a cut path to a clearing with no trees and a single rock in front. He sat on it and patted the seat beside him. Izuku followed, looking ahead. Why are we here? The sun is going to rise. We already saw it rising. I know, but this will give us a better view. Right on time, the sun crept behind the dozen pine trees and poked its light towards the two. In rays, the sun beamed into Izuku's eyes. The mix of oranges and pinks decorated the sun's surroundings like a painting his dad would show him. It's so appealing. I know. Izuku stared at the sun, loving the colors. As he did this, a hand touched his own, before zipping away. He glanced at Hitoshi in question. He had a bright red face, almost like the sky. Izuku shrugged, touching his hand. Hitoshi went stiff, causing Izuku to think he did something wrong. His voice was zapped out of him as Hitoshi laid his hand on top of his. It was nice. You hungry? Hitoshi asked randomly, startling Izuku out of his thoughts. When he thought of it, he quite was. After all, it is morning. I am. Great. There's a place around here where we can go eat. It will be the start of our adventure, your very first restaurant. Izuku giggled. Sounds fun. Come on, it's this way. Hitoshi led Izuku back on the path and to a cut path leading to a light post and sign. Izuku felt Hitoshi touch his hand a few times as they walked side by side down the cut path, as if he wanted to hold it. Was this a frequent occurrence? Izuku was unable to speak as they approached the diner. The diner cast shadows on the grass as it glowed dimly in the forest. Fairy lights adorned the trees, creating a dreamy atmosphere. It perplexed him why there was a restaurant in the middle of nowhere, but after Hitoshi pointed to a second path, multiple buildings sat beside it, each serving a purpose. Near the path and the diner, large, strange metal-looking objects sat on solid flooring. It's an isolated town where not much happens and not a lot of people live here. So don't be surprised if you didn't hear it from your house. Izuku nodded, following Hitoshi to the front door. Ready for your first adventure? Sure. What are those? Izuku pointed at the metal objects. And why is this path so big? Oh right, those things are called cars, and the path is called a road. Cars go on the road and travel on it. Hitoshi explained, reaching out a hand for the handle. He had a sad expression on his face and said, "It's unfair that you don't know things." Izuku didn't say anything after that. The two walked inside the door, and he felt his eyes widen. It was his very first room other than his house. It's now or never. If he backs out now, he can still make it up to his dad. But if he goes in, he will change the rest of his life. You coming? Hitoshi held the door for him, waving a hand inside. Izuku smiled and nodded. I am. He stepped inside, crossed the threshold, and closed his eyes. This was it. Things are never going to be the same. He's going to learn things he's never learned before and that will change him and his dad's relationship for the rest of his life. As much as the thought was overbearing, he didn't feel any different being inside the restaurant. The fact that the restaurant was virtually empty save for a few patrons could have something to do with it. Izuku ran in fear behind Hitoshi. The only attention the people paid was to say good morning to each other. Hitoshi courteously echoed it. Izuku followed Hitoshi, but he sensed a powerful tug. His hair got tangled up around a lamppost and a rock as he peered behind him. Izuku hurried outside and pulled on his hair to prevent it from flowing out all over the place. He returned inside and sat down next to Hitoshi in a booth. He was virtually sitting on top of Izuku when he sat next to him. Izuku didn't mind that his thighs were touching, it was soothing. He sighed and clasped his hair. Hitoshi's face was pure red. You okay? Yep. Never better, look at these menus. Hitoshi blurted out, passing a plastic menu with words and pictures of food. Wow, Izuku's eyes widened, there are so many. Yeah, pick one. I don't have a lot of money on me, Hitoshi explained, pulling out a black wallet from his pocket. How did I not see that earlier? Izuku murmured, eyes narrowing. Oh, I don't know. As the two looked at the menu, Hitoshi assisted Izuku with what he wanted to eat and what would be expected. A server Hitoshi said they were a server came up with a peppy attitude, something Izuku never knew someone could be. What do you guys want? The lady asked with enthusiasm, and it made Izuku slightly flinch. The lady, Hitoshi, whispered to him, saying that she was a girl. He could tell from a mile that she looked oddly different compared to him and Hitoshi. For one, her voice was high-pitched and sweeter. And her body shape was different, she had a bump near her breast. It amazed him that there could be girls and boys as well, not just boys. There was also the fact that Izuku placed a protective hand over his hair, eyeing the lady. Hitoshi said it wasn't normal for someone to steal his hair or quirk. Even the word quirk was odd. But it made sense, his quirk is his hair. Though, it bugged him that his dad never mentioned it before. Hitoshi listed off their orders and asked for coffee and hot chocolate. The server came back with the steamy hot mugs and left with a wink. Why did she wink? Izuku asked as he took a long sip of hot chocolate. It was so good. Taking a second long sip, he spared a glance towards Hitoshi. I don't know. Okay then, so, what else do we do here? Mostly talk. Izuku tapped at his mug, sipping the content. Hitoshi did the same but was looking away as he did it. Izuku didn't mind, he guessed it was Hitoshi's tradition as he drank coffee. His dad enjoyed the quiet when he drank. Soon, after a long awkward silence, the server came back with 2 big plates of food. She placed them in front of the appropriate person and asked if they needed anything else. Yeah, Hitoshi said, is there a pay phone here? Or any phone I could use? Oh yes. There's a phone near the bathrooms. If you take a right down that hall, you'll see it. The lady pointed towards the hall, which went into a dark hallway. Waving goodbye, she left to serve another table. Why did you ask that? Izuku asked. Hitoshi didn't respond. Izuku picked up his chopsticks and mixed up his food before munching it up. It was so good. Taking a sip from his mug, Izuku sighed. Hitoshi had a bite before placing the food down. Just nothing. Stay here. Hitoshi got up from the booth and walked down the hall, not looking back at all. Izuku scared in a needy whine as Hitoshi's thigh left his own. He chose to smile as he left. Tucking back in, Izuku finished up his meal. As Hitoshi reached the payphone, he pulled out a coin and slotted it inside the receiver. He tapped on the buttons and put the phone to his ear. It rang a few times, and when Hitoshi thought no one was going to answer, his mom spoke. She sounded tired, though that was how she normally acted. Hey, Mom. Hitoshi. Where have you been? Are in the forest. And I may have been kidnapped by a boy who is the same age as me and got a lot of trauma. And who has been isolated for the whole of their lives. Oh Hitoshi. I know it doesn't make sense, but hear me out. Hitoshi looked around him and said, I'll tell you the story. Go ahead. Hitoshi explained Izuku's situation and what happened to him. He talked about Izuku's possessive and crazy dad and how he had been the second person he had ever seen in his life. He spoke about some of the odd behaviors he had, ending the explanation with Izuku's quirk. Oh Hitoshi. Are you mad? No, I just don't get how so many bad things can happen to you. Hitoshi laughed, scratching his cheek. Mad luck. Maybe, so what are you going to do now? I want to show Izuku the world before bringing him back. Hopefully, during that time period, I can persuade Izuku to stay with me instead of going back. And Mom. Yes, hun. Can he stay with us? I want to take him home. Of course you can. Hitoshi talked with his mom for a little longer. She recited what happened at home, which was nothing much and a few I love yous. Hitoshi thanked his fantastic mom before hanging up, feeling proud of helping someone who wasn't himself. He can prove to everyone he's not a villain after all. Izuku, as he waited for Hitoshi at the booth, finished up his meal and pushed it to the side. More people came into the diner with exhausted faces, making him think they woke up recently. He was surprised that he wasn't very tired, he was energetic. Perhaps it had to do with the adrenaline pumping through his veins. A few of them looked over at Izuku but didn't pay him any mind, which did loads for him as he was terrified if they were going to steal his quirk. Some of them talked about a flame hero fighting a water villain and new quirks they saw in town. Izuku tuned into their conversation, curious about what else they were going to make up. He found himself enjoying the fictional story the man was talking about, one that had him saving a girl from a villain. Hitoshi came back soon after with a small smile. He sat back down and finished up his meal. Hitoshi. Izuku wanted to ask what he was doing but knew better not to. If Hitoshi wanted to tell him, he would have. Yeah. Hitoshi said, mid-bite. What are those guys talking about? Instead of asking about why he was away, he decided to ask about what the men were talking about. He had an idea, but it struck him as odd that they were having so much fun talking about stories. It's nothing, Hitoshi said dismissively, waving a hand away. Izuku huffed, crossing his arms. It probably was just that the men were very animated about hero and villain stories, and Hitoshi didn't want to state the obvious. The two went into a comforting silence, with Izuku casually watching Hitoshi eat. He had a permanent blush crossing his cheeks, looking away every so often. Izuku found it amusing. Furrowing his brow, he stared at him with a smile. Stop it or you'll give me a heart attack. Hitoshi deadpanned, collecting the dishes into one neat pile so the server had an easier time cleaning the table. Izuku looked down at his lap, knowing Hitoshi was upset with him. Why Hitoshi's heart was causing an issue for him was a mystery, but it was something Izuku should respect. I'm sorry, I was trying to be funny. Oh, I was being sarcastic. I don't mind you doing it. Hitoshi explained with a warm smile. Izuku let out a sigh of relief. I'll be back. Hitoshi said roughly, shimmying himself off the booth. Where are you going? Izuku couldn't help but ask. I'm going to pay. Stay here. Hitoshi went over to the counter where the servers were, and the server pulled out a weird-looking device with buttons and glowing lights and gave it to Hitoshi. Izuku watched in rapt attention, his eyes widening ever so slightly as the beep came from the machine. A scuttling sound echoed around the dining room, startling Izuku. He glanced at where it came from and found a man holding a rectangular box looking at him. He stuffed it back into his pocket and proceeded to eat. Izuku ignored it, finding it funny that the rectangular box made that noise. What was that? Izuku blurted out as Hitoshi came back with a piece of paper in hand. Why did she give you paper? Oh, it's the receipt. Hitoshi shrugged and a few seconds passed as he groaned. Right. It's proof that you bought something and tells you how much you spent. Oh, okay. Izuku didn't get most of it, but he nodded nonetheless. Observing Hitoshi's body language, he could tell he was annoyed that he had to explain everything to Izuku. What are we going to do now? Hitoshi waved at the door, leaving. Come on. Izuku pulled himself out of the booth and collected his hair before heading towards the door behind Hitoshi. Keeping his head low, he chose not to look at the others there as he still felt paranoid they would attack him after one look in the eye. A rough hand grabbed his shoulder, pulling him back to face the person. A rough, murky man gave him a smirk and winked with drunken eyes. Izuku started, taking a step back. Hitoshi you have appealing hair, boy. Can I touch it no. Izuku screamed, slapping at the hand with all his strength. He darted out of the cafe, cradling his hair close to his chest. In a rush of panic, Izuku whipped his head around to find a hiding spot, his heart racing. One look at a shaded tree, and Izuku ran over. Falling to his knees, Izuku curled his arms around his legs and moved his face into his hair. Izuku! Hitoshi called, panic lacing his voice. Oh my god, Izuku! You can't just run like that. He fell to the ground, ignoring a ragged rock poking out of the ground. Izuku! Izuku rocked himself. I want to go home. Come on, it was just a one-time thing. What happens if it happens again? I can't lose my powers. You won't. I was going to stop the man before he was going to do anything to you. He touched me. I didn't want that. The man was a thing creep. Most people are not like that. Hitoshi said, trying his hardest to persuade Izuku. He wanted to believe Hitoshi, but his anxiety was eating his heart. I can't lose my powers. I know you can't. And it won't happen. Now one has the ability to steal quirks. Dad said everyone can. He lied. Izuku whined, you think so? Have I tried to steal your quirk? Izuku shook his head. Exactly, I won't ever. Please just trust me, at least until I bring you back. Okay. Okay. Izuku agreed, taking Hitoshi's outstretched hand. Let's keep on going. He nodded, tightening his hand around Hitoshi's. The two started back on their trek, this time going down the road of buildings. Izuku had his head lowered, still cradling his hair. All for One was having a good day as he finished up his grocery shopping. He had little time remaining until his successor, Tomura Shigaraki, would be infiltrating the USJ. As of right now, he was talking to Kurogiri and all the other villains about the plan. All for One saw it as a means to do some of his errands while he waited for the plan to be said. After all, he was the one to come up with it, and it was just up to Tomura to enact it. Using the half hour to buy some groceries for the house, All for One felt happy about what was going on in his life. Izuku, his perfect son, was at home in his room doing nothing as he waited for his father to come home. He scratched his ego, thinking Izuku was at home thinking about him. He loved how Izuku was wrapped around his finger, but it still made him question if Izuku was pulling away or not. All for One inserted his debit card into the machine and retrieved his groceries. All for One requested that Kurogiri construct a portal. As he waited, he glanced up at the sun. The shining orb beamed in his eyes, making him blink for a long second. It was rising, reflecting the start of a new day. He was quite thankful the grocery store he enjoys going to was open at 7 a.m. If not, he would have gone shopping after the mission was completed. However, he knew he wouldn't get enough time to do so as he knew Tomura would end up getting hurt with his reckless personality. Sighing, All for One felt a wind shift to accompany a purple warp gate. Taking a step towards it, he stopped walking at the voice. Did you hear about it? A man gushed, pulling on his partner's arm and moving his phone at his partner. What? The partner asked, rolling their eyes. Look at Twitter. A boy with really long green hair was walking hand in hand with a purple-haired boy at the dinner in Dash. All for One chose not to listen. Jerking back, he used his beta teleportation quirk, which only moved you about 1 kilometer away, but it worked quickly. Creating multiple portals, All for One rushed to the cottage. In a flurry, he ripped the door off the hooks and threw the groceries onto the kitchen island. Izuku! He called, come here. I'm home early. I won't get bad if you leave your room. He talked faster the more he boomed down the hallway, his heart pounding as he did. He pulled open the door and sked in a breath. The room was empty with a few blankets sprawled around, the closet door wide open. All for One laughed, a loud one. He knew it, he knew it. He pulled out his phone, along with the second phone Izuku gave him. After a quick use of his quirk to unlock the phone, he went onto the photo app and cycled through them. All signs point to a purple-haired boy with a sleep issue owning the phone. And that person stole Izuku. With no negotiation in mind, All for One knew exactly what he wanted to do now. He wants to personally murder him and bring Izuku back. He doesn't care that the purple-haired boy looks like a teenager, he could fing careless. He stole his Izuku. And that won't ever be forgiven. His anger erupted through his quirks when he looked at Twitter for the post about his Izuku. The house creaked and groaned under the pressure. Izuku was sitting at a booth with his hair gathered to the side. The teenager didn't look to be in sight, which was pleasant. Though, that didn't mean he wasn't there. The photographer got a perfect photo of Izuku looking forward with amusement and awe in his eyes. All for One took a quick glance at the comments that said where the photo was taken, as others were curious at how a cute boy with long hair was all alone. Anger boiling in his gut, All for One rushed out of the house, heading to the diner. With a quick phone call to Kurogiri, he explained he had some matters to attend to and to start the attack as soon as they were in the clear. Stuffing the two phones into his pockets, All for One used his quirk to head to the forest diner. Izuku staggered behind Hitoshi, cradling his hair close. His eyes went about looking at everyone and everything that could mess it up. Hitoshi smiled sadly at him, wanting to press him more about how he was feeling. But he refused, pleasing Izuku. Down the road, a crowd circled each other, heads hung low, murmuring. Izuku scurried away as fast as he could, not wanting to take any chances. He looked behind him when he was in the clear. Hitoshi was on the outside, looking down a shoulder. Izuku panicked, tightening his hands around his hair. Hitoshi, he hissed, tapping the ground. Come on, let's go. He wanted to yell out and demand Hitoshi leave them and go, but he couldn't. If he did, it would draw the attention of the group. His heart flying a minute, he stepped back. If he lays low and waits for Hitoshi, he'll be out of the green light. Izuku spent only 1 second looking around to find cover. A brick building casts a shadow among wooden ones, making a passageway between the two. Izuku shot towards it, racing down it. The shallow cast was a perfect shelter and disguise for him. Izuku sighed in relief, leaning against the brick wall. He took time to meditate and relax his heart from beating a mile a minute. He dropped his hair to the safety of the shadows, giving his arms some much-needed rest. Wow, you must be the green-haired boy on Twitter. Izuku yelled, Eep. He pushes himself off the wall and lands on his knees. Tears threatened to fall from the blossoming pain. Go away. Izuku scratched his hands as he scrambled away, the girl coming closer. The girl didn't seem to notice his panic as she smiled wider and stepped forward until Izuku hit a dead end. Izuku gasped and jerked his head to the side, proving that he was stuck. The girl stopped in front of him, crouching down. She had brown hair, green eyes, and red lips. It was odd how red they were, causing Izuku to chuck it up as the girl's body. I never see guys with long hair, they have like short hair, not long. Can I take a picture? No. Better yet, can I touch it? It must be very soft. Maybe like freshly grown grass. No. Izuku yelled, collecting his hair in his arms. It's mine. I need it. Oh come on, just one touch. Please. I'll even pay you. The girl kneeled as she pulled out the same object Hitoshi had pulled out when paying for breakfast. Izuku shook his head. No. I don't need your money. I want you to leave. The girl creased her eyebrows. Her mouth opened and, what are you doing to him? A concerned and panicked voice stopped the girl from talking. Izuku smiled happily, Hitoshi. The girl sent him a glare, making Izuku curl in on himself. You know him? Yes. Izuku murmured. How does a freak like him know someone as cute as you? The girl pointed at Hitoshi, the wrath flowing from her voice. We're friends, Hitoshi answered. Stepping closer, now are you going to leave him alone? No, the girl shouted, shooting up from the ground. I will dash. Her voice flipped off at Hitoshi's glare. Izuku titled his head, what? She was fighting just a second ago. Why are you talking to him? The girl answered in a monotoned way, almost like how dad speaks when he is exhausted. I saw him on Twitter and thought that he was adorable. Plus, he's such a mystery. A boy with extremely long hair, in a diner and in PJs, so cute. Like something you'd see in a movie. I saw him resting in the alleyway and thought it was the perfect time to get a photo and touch his hair. Hitoshi shivered, his eyes twitching. How popular is this Twitter post? Not that popular. The person who posted it had taken it down because of, the girl pointed at Izuku, his father. Elaborate. Apparently, his father called the account owner and told them to take it down or he would bring the police into the situation. How do you know this? Hitoshi's voice got more panicky the more he asked. Izuku was barely listening, just trying to calm his heart. The account owner posted a second tweet saying they had to take down the previous tweet because of the demands. Pretty much everything I just told you was in the tweet. Show me. The girl pulled out a rectangular object, the same thing he keeps seeing, and gave it to Hitoshi. Izuku stared in awe at the control he had. It felt like the girl was following his every command, which was odd. Did she think Hitoshi was cute too? He's not claiming Hitoshi is cute, rather, he's merely saying he thinks everyone finds him appealing. Probably. However, it's unlikely because she called him a freak. Unless she had a change of heart. Hitoshi gave back the phone after a command to unlock it and went back to tapping at it. He swiped it a few times, then groaned. He gave it back with a push. "Leave. And don't tell anyone we were here." The girl miraculously walked away in a straight line, turning right at the entrance. She didn't say anything or nod, she just followed the command like a mindless machine. Hitoshi watched as the girl left, shaking his head. Izuku saw his hands clenching so much that his knuckles were stark white. "Hitoshi?" Izuku asked in a whisper, frightened of what he saw. Just a moment earlier, the woman started nagging and harassing him about his alleged celebrity. He's not really that cute, at least not in the way the girl claims, which made Izuku want to chuckle. He was cute, according to his father, but that was a father-son thing. Hearing her say it made him feel strange, like she wasn't the right person to say it to him. However, Hitoshi had the option if he so desired. Of course, if he wants to. He would never be coerced into doing anything by Izuku, especially at first. However, he found it painful to consider that Hitoshi would soon leave his life. He would be saying farewell to him the following morning, which was so soon. Shaking his head off the depressing thoughts, he dragged his brain to think about the present. Hitoshi did something to make the girl listen to him and answer his questions. Even his dad doesn't have the power to make him answer his questions in the finest detail. However, Hitoshi does. It can't be a coincidence, it can't be. The girl's personality would never allow her to answer questions like that, especially about secretive things. What just happened? We got to go. Hitoshi shot him a look and grabbed his arm, pulling him up from the ground. "Why? Wait. Explain what you just did." Hitoshi chose to ignore him as he dragged Izuku out of the alleyway and onto the road, looking back and forth for people. Later. Later. I want to know now. I want to know if you would do something like that to me. Izuku exclaimed, pulling on his hand with the opposite force. What? Hitoshi stilled, tensing up. He jerked his hand back, holding it up to his chest. Izuku felt a pang of guilt at Hitoshi's shocked expression. He wanted to apologize, listen to him, and say they could keep on going. But no, he couldn't. He needed to know. The girl back there, she wasn't listening to you or I, until you started talking to her. Then she started answering all your questions and then left at your command. I know it's no coincidence, it can't be. Hitoshi sighed, rubbing his face. It's my quirk. Your quirk. Remember how I didn't tell you what my quirk is? Izuku nodded. I just thought you didn't have one. What? No. I do. I'm just ashamed of it as people say it's a bad quirk. Hitoshi stumbled with his words. Izuku got the gist of it, nodding along. What is the quirk called? Hitoshi hunched over himself. It's called brainwashing. I just have to ask someone a question and have them answer, and once they do, I have full control over them. I'd give them orders and they'd carry them out until I sever the control. Whoa. That's so cool. Izuku blushed, throwing his hands around, letting his hair fall. Why's that a bad quirk? You're not afraid of me? His eyes widened slightly. A little, but I trust you won't use your quirk on me for negative reasons. You don't think it's a bad quirk? Izuku smiled and shook his head. Nope. You're a great person, and it's the person who makes their ability or quirk bad. Not the quirk itself. Oh whoa, you really know how to make me blush, Hitoshi laughed, scratching his cheek. Izuku giggled back, reaching for Hitoshi's hand. I like it when you blush, it makes me feel all good inside my chest. Hitoshi chuckled at that, ruffling Izuku's curls. Come on, let's go. Okay. The two trekked down the road, avoiding the eyes of others when they saw Izuku. Hitoshi rested his arm around his neck, pulling him behind buildings if needed. The edge of the road came to an abrupt end. The road mingling with the dirt made it feel like it was on the outskirts. What now? Izuku asked, crouching down to touch the road and dirt. Izuku. Yes. He sat up, tilting his head. I just remembered, Hitoshi whispered, anxiety dripping from his voice. Looking out onto the street as he rubbed his elbow. Were you listening to what the girl said when I was talking to her? No. I mean, a little. But that was at the start and end. I was focusing on panicking. If that makes sense. Saying it out loud makes it sound like he was crazy. No, I get it. Don't underestimate yourself. Did she say something bad about me? Yes, she sadly did. Oh, well, it's a good thing I didn't hear it. All for One pursued his son in the shadows while maintaining a blank expression. Izuku's actions and the boy's peculiarity were observed. Izuku was afraid of the oddity, as he calculated. Izuku settling down, though, was not theorized. He had the opportunity to seize Izuku there and then, when Hitoshi used his quirk on the girl. However, All for One was quite interested in seeing how Izuku would respond. Likewise, with Hitoshi. Everything he believed his son to be, including his obedience and loyalty, was destroyed. He was also extremely disappointed. He shook his head and walked into the diner. He had the option of pursuing the two, but he decided against it. Hitoshi decided not to tell Izuku what he had observed, which was that All for One was looking for his son. To make Izuku not freak out was the obvious motive behind his actions. He will attempt to return home if he thinks his father knows he is gone. Hitoshi obviously did not longing that. He wanted to disrupt their small family. He should have been killed right there and then. No, he laughed. He'll induce anxiety in Hitoshi. When Hitoshi is about to lose it, All for One will pursue him and seize Izuku. He will invoke fear in his soul. The diner's waitress offered no assistance. They invaded his personal space by asking him why he was inquiring. If he had not been attempting to learn information, he would have tormented them. He only stated that he was the father of the kid with green hair and that the boy with purple hair was his son's friend. He was looking for them as they ran. He claimed that because they believed him, the lie worked. The deception itself was very pitiful. Hitoshi wasn't Izuku's friend. Izuku doesn't need any friends. They informed him of the details he already knew about his son, including his appearance and behavior. But Hitoshi becomes even more fascinating. The server told him that he had paid for everything and even helped Izuku pick out what he wanted from the menu. Plus, at one point, he left to use the pay phone. The server didn't know who he called but heard Hitoshi ask if Izuku could live with them. His parents. All for One questioned if she knew where they were headed between clenched teeth. No, the server replied. All for One opted to simply nod and walk out of the restaurant. He'll go out and get them. He is now aware of their destination. Hitoshi's house. Can we take a break? The hills and roots did wonders for his physical health. Izuku was exhausted, but he pushed forward. Hitoshi mostly had to stop and let Izuku catch up. They were at the edge of the forest, Hitoshi kept on saying. Each step was tiresome on its own. Izuku groaned and sat down on a stump with the sun beating down on his skin. Hitoshi put his hands on his hips and narrowed his eyes. Fine. Hitoshi went to sit next to Izuku but could not do so since Izuku had taken the space to put his hair down to prevent dirt from getting in it. He looked around and saw a log some distance away. He trekked over in long strides. One misstep, he lodged his food under the poking root and stumbled forward. Hitoshi moved his foot out, nearly taking the whole plant with him. Toshi! Izuku yelled, rushing over to him. The momentum threw Hitoshi off balance, scrambling back. In an act to save his soul, he hooked his foot around a second root coming from the side. This was the wrong move. Instead of falling on his butt, he fell on his side, landing directly on the side of his ankle. Hitoshi groaned, feeling every bruise. Toshi! Izuku rushed to his side, hands hovering. I think I sprained my ankle. Hitoshi grips his leg, sitting up. It really hurts. It wasn't mangled, thank God. If it was, it would have been broken. Sparks of strained pain shot up his spine. Twitching at the pain, Hitoshi cursed. My ankle hurts. I'm so sorry. I can't show you things. Hitoshi smacked the ground. No, don't panic. Izuku exclaimed, I can heal you. He pulled his hair to his hands and sat closer to Hitoshi's ankle. He grunted, your hair. Yes. Remember how I'm so protective of it? It's because my powers reside in my hair. All I have to do is wrap my hair around your ankle and sing a song, and you'll be healed. What dash, just let me do it. Izuku runs his hair under the ankle, gently lifting it by the shin. Hitoshi cursed, twitching away from the pain. Just do it. Izuku nodded quickly, racing to wrap his hair around the injury. Okay, here it goes. It was a challenge to do so without an instrument because he needed the tempo to help channel the powers. He clenched his fists and banged them into the ground, trying to create a bass. Hitoshi was quiet as Izuku sang the lyrics, utterly in awe of his singing. His green hair pulsed a neon green, starting from the top and weaving to the edges. A flash of light formed at his ankle, the pain ebbed away. A throb, a pulse, and then nothing. The last line ended with the light flowing back to the crown of Izuku's head. What the? Hitoshi choked out, staring at his painless ankle. Izuku giggled, rolling his eyes. My dad had the same reaction. Well, maybe not the same. But close. He had a huge smile. Hitoshi didn't respond, still at a loss of words. Izuku unraveled the hair and pressed a hand to the ankle, forcing pressure on it. Hitoshi began to flinch, not ready for the incoming pain. He stared in awe. It was healed. It feels normal. Perfect. I still got it. Izuku cheered, pumping his fist in the air. Is this why you're so protective of it? If I lose my abilities, I won't be able to heal my dad. You have to heal him. Izuku maneuvered himself so that he was shoulder to shoulder with Hitoshi. Yeah, he comes home sometimes with injuries and it's my job to heal him. Whoa, that's a lot of responsibility. Sure is. But I like it. Every time I do it, I feel needed. Izuku smiled, weaving a hand through his hair. Stopping at a particular knot, Izuku used his nails to pull out the hair. Hitoshi shook his head, taking the hair in his hands, he gently brushed out the knot. Izuku watched as he did it. Resting his head against Hitoshi's shoulder, he smiled. You called me Toshi. Is that a nickname? Izuku flushed in embarrassment. Why yes. If you'd like. I like it. Silence surrounded the two. The sounds of the forest brushed past their ears, encasing them in a mystical world. Birds chirped, leaves scuttled against each other, and wind blew through the trees. What's the real reason why you were near my house, Toshi? Hitoshi allowed his mouth to run wild. He explained it all. His parents, his quirk and the bullying at school, him trying to get into you, spending time in the forest and finding the house. He explained in extra detail whenever a term came up that was odd. Like, heroes and villains. It took him a while to make Izuku grasp the idea that there were heroes and villains, actual real-life people. Not like fictional characters, being a hero was a genuine job choice. At the diner, people were talking about a villain attack, in which heroes stopped them. Does that mean it wasn't fictional? That actually happened? Hitoshi nodded, yeah. Why didn't you say anything about it? He said in a breath, I didn't want to talk about it as my dreams were crushed because of the heroes. You want to be a hero? Izuku asked. Wanted, Hitoshi emphasized, my quirk won't allow me to. What? You saved me earlier. That's what heroes do. I think, from what my dad said, that's what they do. Izuku's dad never went into much detail about heroes, only saying they are meant to save people in the stories. At one time, Izuku found a book that Dad brought home from the store. The story talked about a hero and a villain. Dad explained it was mythology. Yeah, I did. But to get into the hero course in you need to pass a test where you fight robots. Hitoshi sighed, rubbing his forehead. I failed it. Oh. Although, I don't think it was a bad thing. I got to meet you in the end, right? Izuku smiled gently, that's true. Stop smiling, you're going to give me a heart attack, Hitoshi grumbled, shoving Izuku away. He laughed and said, sorry, I just like smiling. You know, Izuku waved a hand, I wanted to go back as I was scared people were going to take my ability away. But after hearing there's such a thing called villains and heroes, I want to prove to everyone that you're my hero, Toshi. Or, Izuku. Hitoshi couldn't help but wrap his arms around Izuku and hug him tight. I can't wait.